guitar, cheap microphone and an old guitar. I'm a big star at a local bar with a cheap microphone and an old guitar. Cheap microphone and an old guitar. Cheap microphone and an old guitar. I'm a big star at a local bar with a cheap microphone and an old guitar. Oh, I know I never go. Oh, it helps to soothe my soul.
Sometimes you just got to let the band finish. That is Ayla Brooke and the Soundmen on Fallen Tree Records. You have to check out that album, Desolation Sounds, and we are so grateful that they have, Ayla Brooke has licensed Real Talk. They've donated that tune. They've donated that album for our use, which is absolutely amazing, and we appreciate that from the band and from the label. A good Friday morning to you. Ryan Jesperson here with you. A Friday edition, a good Friday edition. I'm feeling like no glasses today. We're not going to wear glasses today. Here we are, Real Talk. That's technical producer Samuel G. Brooks. How are you feeling today?
Real Talk. I'm good. I'm fired up now. I mean, it's like okay.
I'm glad you picked that tune.
Well, the thing is, I kind of only play that one on Fridays.
Okay,
right? I'm
it's
just
a little
sort of
treat for us.
It's a little treat for us. We get into the big rock and roll tune on Friday, and it's a fun.
Well,
track.
a job very well done.
Yeah.
I think we're both excited because of our show today. It's going to be amazing. Scaachi Koul is going to join us from Buzzfeed. She's going to check in from New York. Their senior culture writer. In just a few minutes. We've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. And as a matter of fact, one of the interesting things about an interview like Scaachi's is it's obviously Sam and I think I can speak for you because you were pretty excited when she confirmed. We're both fans of her work. We like her writing, but she's also been nominated by many, many Real Talkers as someone that you would like to hear on the show. And we love these emails. That's why we booked Michael E. Mann a couple of weeks ago. That's why we've booked people in past. You've put them on our radar and said we'd love to see them on this show. And so that goes for Scaachi too. Several of you have nominated her. We're excited about that. Coming up in about a half an hour's time, we're going to talk to the winners. We'll call it the Winners Circle Real Talk Roundtable on this Friday, live at about 9:05 a.m. Mountain, 11:05 a.m. Eastern. If you're streaming this, if you listen to it later, about a half hour from now, the winners of yesterday's University of Alberta Faculty of Graduate Studies and Research 3MT competition. This is the 3-minute thesis competition. You know, we've all talked to somebody that's very, very like high-level smart, way smarter than the rest of us, researcher, innovator, whatever the case may be, and we can't really get a handle on what it is they're doing. Like they can't even talk down to us low enough that we can understand it. These three were elevated amongst their peers, and that's saying something because yesterday's competition, which I was so honored to host, was an incredible display of what's going on there in that faculty. 15 finalists presented their 3-minute thesis, a 3-minute summary made accessible. I'm talking like at an intellectual level to people like me, to common folk. explaining about the work that they're doing. And we're going to learn about what our three winners, our first runner-up, our first place, and our People's Choice winner are working on, why it's exciting for them. You're going to get a chance to see some of the innovation that's underway, some of the research that's being done at one of Canada's most prominent and largest universities. That's coming up. And then Rakhi Pancholi is going to join us. This booking kind of happened live on yesterday's show.
Yep.
We were talking to Brad West from Glengarry Childcare. Brad was, if you watch the interview, I was about to say he was pretty upset, but then let me say he was very well composed and very well spoken, but you can feel it. Like when you heard him talking about what the end of the $25 a day childcare initiative, what the end of that funding is going to mean for so many families and for his business, and for essentially childcare across the province. The guy didn't mince words when it came to how he felt about this government's performance. You can find that interview yesterday. I encourage you to download the podcast. If you didn't watch it on YouTube, check that out, or even check out the minute or minute and a half long clip that I tweeted out yesterday. You'll see what I'm talking about. Rakhi reached out. She's the official opposition critic for Children's Services. She says, hey, we're working on a lot of things. We'd love to put it in front of the audience. And if you were watching or listening to yesterday's show, you know that we essentially kind of completed that booking while we were live. Sometimes that just happens on Twitter. People are going, you should get Rakhi. She chimes in. She says, I'm in. I said, okay, 9:45. She goes, yeah. So here she is. She's going to be coming up in about an hour and 10 minutes from now. So that'll be a good one. Plus, it's Friday, so Trash Talk is coming up. I have what I think
nobody's angry about anything.
Nobody's angry about anything right now.
Yeah.
So it's mostly about gasoline prices and things like that. Sort of global economic. No, it's not. It's a very pointed and focused. But if you think it's going to be all about curriculum, think again, because what I've done is I've curated it this week. And so Friday's Trash Talk presented by Local Waste is going to be one you won't want to miss. It's kind of rude what I'm doing right now, actually. I'm in front of a microphone with a lozenge in my mouth. I'm not going to say the brand, even though it's so fun to sing, because, well, they don't pay for us to say it, Sam. We only say things when people... No, I'm just kidding. I've got a Ricola lozenge in my mouth, and that's not because I have a sore throat, nor because I'm sick, but it's because I know that in approximately 75 to 90 minutes from now, I'm going to go absolutely ballistic on an edition of Trash Talk that sometimes leaves me rendered incapable of expressing myself. It takes such a toll on my voice box. Can you imagine what it would be like?
Is it a little bit serendipitous that probably one of our most explosive trash talks yet comes right before a 4-day weekend? Like you're going to need some recovery time, aren't you?
I'm going to need some recovery time. I'm going to take full advantage. I'm going to put the phone down and shut it off. And it would be great to hear from Real Talkers. What are your long weekend plans? Your Easter long weekend, whatever you're celebrating. Maybe you're on the precipice of Ramadan, or maybe you're just like looking forward to getting outside. Maybe you don't observe religious traditions, but you can't wait for a couple of days off. This Friday might be your first day off in a long time. Or maybe you're joining us from home in sweatpants like you've done with everybody else for the last 14 months. Either way, it's going to be a great show. We're glad you're hanging out with us. Probably a good time to remind all of you that join us, especially those of you that join us live, that wake up in the morning. This is the Bitcoin Well music. And just leave it going. It's okay. I know it's supposed to. No, just leave it going. Leave it going. I love it because everything in life should be done with a music bed under it. Imagine washing the dishes to this tune. Like you kind of fall into a rhythm.
This
you know
is
what I'm
good
saying?
strutting around
twist
music.
And twist and twist and dry. Twist and rinse and twist and dry. But we're working today, right? Obviously, here we are live on this April 2nd. That means, though, that we're going to take next Tuesday off, all right? So we're going to come to you live again next Wednesday morning. It means Positive Reflections presented by Kubi Energy. All of your happy stories, your pay it forward stories, your random acts of kindness submitted to talk@ryanjesperson.com will still make it into next week's shows, but we're going to be off, Sam and I, taking days off, spending time with our families. Monday, Tuesday, we'll be back live Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. Mountain Time. Bitcoin Well has been the presenting sponsor of this show ever since we launched. As a matter of fact, they were with us way before then, and we're super grateful for it. They're helping us, as a matter of fact, a little peek behind the curtain, tiny little peek behind the curtain. My personal story, my personal connection with Bitcoin Well involves me trusting them to guide me through my entry into crypto. And we're finding a balance on what we're comfortable with for the business of this show to invest in a little bit of crypto. How much do I understand about it? Basically nothing. and they help me make sense of it all. They can do the same for you. It's all about this financial sovereignty idea. It's worth checking out. That's all I'll say. Check out the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
So yeah, it's a little weird that in promoting today's show, I let everybody know how excited we are to welcome Scaachi Koul, senior culture writer for Buzzfeed, to the show. I say we'll be talking in my promotional tweet about QAnon, Ramona Quimby, and a list of people that Scaachi's mad at, but I think we can pull it off. I'm so excited to welcome her to the show based out of New York City this morning. Thanks for making time for us.
When?
Okay, I almost think, like, where do we start? Because your Substack is amazing, and I want to talk to you about the future of media and where talented writers are going. And every week, I was hitting refresh this morning, like, is this week's list up yet? This week's list of people that Scaachi's mad at? Where did you get the idea? Is this a cathartic exercise for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just mad. It's not that complicated. Like, it's not like I have some rich backstory. I'm just mad all the time. I was like, maybe I should write this down.
Well, it's really great because let's click on here. Sam, we can even share the screen. People can check it out at scaachi.substack.com. We'll go to your March 19th list, and some of it's kind of fun, right? Like the cat driving you nuts with her night screaming and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But there's also some serious business, and I'm glad that you get to it. You say, I'm so tired about talking about whether past instances of racism should preclude you from working in a high-profile management job in media. It seems like when you're talking about, you say you're mad all the time. I mean, and you say it with a bit of a smile on your face, but you also offer excellent, pointed conversation. Are you convinced that some of these tough, difficult, uncomfortable, timely conversations, are you convinced that they're happening more in a way that's going to actually make a tangible impact on institutions like media?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. It kind of remains to be seen. Progress happens really slowly. So I think over the last 100 years, there have been things that have changed. And so I don't know if we're more susceptible to having things change now than we were 10 years ago. But I mean, I think every brick that can be taken out of that kind of a wall is probably a good thing. Yeah,
no kidding. How are you making sense of what you're? I mean, we should note you're actually. Is it true that you're born in Calgary? Is that right?
Born and raised. Yeah, I was there till I was 17.
Wow, where'd you go to high school?
I don't tell that because I don't want people to go look up like my photo at the high school. I don't talk about that.
Okay, well, I'll tell you. I went to Henry Wisewood.
See, I didn't go to Wisewood.
You didn't go to Wisewood. Okay, so we've established we do not have that in common. No. If anybody tracks down
Wisewood would have been a competitor.
Oh.
Like I wouldn't, if I had met you in high school, I wouldn't even have spoken to you if you told me that you went to Wisewood.
If I were to look, we're getting really inside baseball now for our niche audience down in Calgary, but maybe they'll be entertained by all of this. If I'm to revisit my high school career of where the most vicious rivalries existed, I would predict, I mean, the fact that you've identified me as a rival, as a Henry Wisewood warrior, I would predict that you attended either Lord Beaverbrook, EP Scarlett, James Fowler, St. Francis.
Yeah, are you just naming all the high schools?
I'm naming all the high schools.
So
I was trying to study your face and see if I could pick anything up from there. But
yeah, that's how magicians work too. They just sort of name every card until they find the one that is yours.
Fortune tellers, palm readers. I mean, these are this is the whole craft, and it's the mark. Yeah. I mean, if I do say, it's the mark of a great interviewer. Really, is what it is. Scaachi. The entire reason I ask about you growing up in Calgary is obviously, I think as a Canadian, and now you work in the United States, obviously you're read internationally. You've got an interesting perspective on media. Plus, you're a senior culture writer for Buzzfeed. You're on digital media. You've got your Substack. You are evolving your career. And in a way, obviously, I guess involving my career, and we see a lot of media folks doing that. At the same time, we see layoffs at the Huffington Post. A buddy of mine in Vancouver just lost his job on terrestrial radio. Newsrooms are being called. What do you make of what you're seeing in media, most particularly in Canada?
Well, I mean, the landscape in Canada is really bleak. I like the thing about like the HuffPost layoffs with HuffPost Canada in particular is that when you get rid of that newsroom, it's very clear that that was a lot of people. It was a lot of people from underrepresented groups. And a lot of those people might not get jobs in media because they don't exist anymore. So it's really become a freelancer ecosystem. It's dire. And I don't know why. I think sometimes you see layoffs happen and you're like, but that was a company that seemed profitable. I mean, everything that's happening with Medium is bonkers. I mean, how many times can you shut down every publication that you run? How many times can you do mass layoffs? I have survived, I think, 4 or 5 mass layoffs in my 10 years working in the industry. So I don't know. I wish I had answers. If I did, I would give them to somebody with some power.
Yeah, well, I don't. That's why I kind of, you look and people will acknowledge and say, the advertising model is broken with newspaper, or there's, I can understand certain things. You don't have to be Paul Godfrey to understand. No, I say that facetiously.
Well, I don't think Paul Godfrey actually understands.
No, I don't.
Either,
Paul Godfrey doesn't understand
yeah.
anything but padding his pockets. Let me be clear.
I'm not sure that's the person I would look to, but I think it's an issue of there being multiple variables. It's not just the ad sales, and it's not just the fact that people don't want to pay for news, and it's not just the fact that certain media companies are owned by people who don't really care about the people they've employed and don't necessarily care about news. And so there's all these different factors that come into play. So it's impossible to just sort of diagnose it with one solution or one
I think you're
infection.
I think you're bang on. This might seem like a bit of a bizarre comparison, but work with me for a second when you say that you're not sure that the big corporations care about the people or the news. And I think you're absolutely correct, because if you think about, the argument to keep small town papers open, or the argument to keep small town radio or TV operating through some tough years or choppy waters, whatever the case may be, comes down to news is important, journalism is important. It's almost like almost a bit of a moral argument. Like, this is an important part of society, holding government accountable, this type of thing. Now, here's where kind of the weird comparison comes in, but I think it works. It's the same sort of idea here in Western Canada, the argument around ethical oil, right? People say, well, you should be buying oil from Canada. You shouldn't be buying oil from places like Venezuela or wherever there's human rights concerns, the Saudis. But the fact of the matter is, the market doesn't care about your feelings. The market doesn't care about things like ethical oil. And I think that in large part is why that argument has failed for about 20 years now. And I kind of wonder if it's the same sort of a thing. If people say, well, small town journalism is important, sure is. And that's why crowdfunding stuff is happening and grassroots independent organizations are coming up. But I don't think that's going to convince, big trillion-dollar firms in the U.S. that hold newspapers as part of whatever they're providing shareholder return on.
No, probably not. Comparing news to oil is indeed a very Albertan thing to do.
Sure it is. Sure it is. But you know what? I think that maybe it's something that works. Actually, I might be onto something. I might write a column on this. Scaachi, this is what happened. Can I talk to you for 15 minutes every week and just like ramp up my thought process?
Why not?
When Beverly Cleary died, it felt like so many people felt such a personal loss because she played such a huge role in people's development. You wrote the most wonderful piece at BuzzfeedNews.com. It was such a personal exercise for you, I have to say. It must have been.
Well, I guess. I feel like I reveal far more in columns than I did in that one, but I just wrote something short about Ramona the Pest, which was one of my favorite books when I was a kid. And like the lovely thing about that book is it's a book for brats, I think written ultimately by somebody who was kind of bratty themselves. And Beverly did say in an interview a couple of years ago that one thing that people really like about Ramona is that she doesn't really get better. There isn't like a moment of reflection for this 6 to 8 year old. And all of a sudden she becomes like a good kid. Just kind of a pest her whole life. And that's just who she needs to be because she's the smallest and the youngest and the one asking for attention. And that's kind of admirable, especially for little girls. You don't get a lot of that. There's a lot of princess making in literature for kids. Yeah, well said. You write, there weren't and still aren't a lot of books about irritable little brown girls with sharp tongues, bad attitudes, and short attention spans. But Ramona the Pest was remarkably close. Yeah, it was an ode to my undiagnosed ADHD as a child, which I really appreciate.
When you just said, you go, I feel like I reveal far more, than you do in your columns. You're, whoever's not following you on Twitter at Scaachi needs to. You can link to it from the tweet that we send out every morning. But you really do. I mean, even just like, we can show your Twitter bio, right? Like it's funny, but you're also like, I love it because you just say it. Like, being depressed used to be my brand, but now everyone is.
I used to have a real shtick, and then COVID hit, and now everybody's sad.
It's just messing with your entire model. It's messing with your entire brand.
I'm gonna have to rebrand to surprise everybody and go full like optimistic, cheerful person.
People wouldn't know what to do with you. People wouldn't know what to do with it. Yeah, there's no way. But do you make a conscious effort? I mean, is this how you've always been? Have you always been someone that, wears her heart on her sleeve? Have you always been somebody that throws it out there and lives publicly, so to speak?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think I live publicly. I think my job just is forward facing. Writing is a rare job where when you do it poorly, people will send you an email about how you did it poorly and tell you about how they can do it better and how they don't think you should have a job anymore. And also preferably they would love if you killed yourself. So I don't think I necessarily have made my job public. I think it's just the nature of being a non-white woman in this industry. You can't really hide. But I probably lack shame. So that's probably why I'm happy to talk about whatever. I'm sure me and my therapist can cover that later, but yeah.
Do you, like, to be serious for a second, like the death threats and all the bullshit, like those types of emails? I've seen some. I bet you've seen way more. How do you manage all that kind of stuff, especially in the context of, you say, as a woman of color? I mean, some of the violence that we're seeing targeting, Canadians of Asian descent, South Asian women in Georgia. I don't have to list every single example. And quite frankly, there are so many that it'll shatter your heart. Are you seeing a ramping up of that type of attack? Has the temperature heated up, even in particular to what's sent your way?
I think the temperature got really hot when Trump was in office, and you could tell there was a kind of hostility to the kind of reporting that I do and the kind of publication I work for. I don't think I noticed an uptick in harassment as a South Asian person. I think that was pretty steady. And I think also the kind of Asian I am is not the kind of Asian that's been targeted in a lot of the hate crimes around COVID misinformation. So that isn't something that I can really speak to, but I haven't noticed it getting worse because I feel like it's always been bad. And I know when I publish something exactly what's going to happen. I know what kind of emails I'm going to get. And sometimes I don't have the energy to do it. Unfortunately, that's like the real loss in this. There are so many writers of color, non-binary people, queer people, women, people of color who don't write certain things because the blowback is just so exhausting. And sometimes you just don't want to deal with it. I mean, like, I have never gotten more angry death threats in my life than when I wrote about how I thought Friends was a bad show.
What?
So it doesn't really matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter what the topic is. It doesn't matter like what political argument I might be making as an opinion writer. There's always somebody who's angry. I still get emails because I said that I didn't like the live action Aladdin. Which, as a brown person, I reserve the right to not like the live action Aladdin. What else do I have? I don't have anything else. This is all I get.
As a brown person, you can reserve the right to not even like the animated Aladdin. I mean, the
animated Aladdin is good. I would never say that. Yes, it's a good movie. Obviously, there are parts of it that don't necessarily hold up, but it was the 90s. What do you want me to do about it? I was 3. But I mean, I still get emails about movie reviews from 2 years ago where like, oh, I wrote, I don't know, something about Jeffrey Toobin. And so then I get emails about Jeffrey Toobin. I mean, like I haven't noticed it getting worse. I mean, I think if it has gotten worse, maybe that's a function of me becoming more public and having, I get it, get different audiences come to your work on different pieces. But,
yeah. I'm trying to think of it's interesting. I mean, like, you commenting on Friends and earning yourself death threats. I can't, I mean, I'm not anything to compare to that.
People really need stuff to do. Everybody's got to go get a hobby.
Yeah. Were you? Did you come into it with like a pro Seinfeld bias? Did you write it through?
Probably. Yeah. But I grew up watching both. Like I can say
okay.
Friends is bad because I watched all of it. And
That
I
was
remember
Thursday night, right?
Thursday night block, I would watch Seinfeld with my dad. I'd watch Friends with my mother, and then I'd watch Frasier by myself.
Frasier. Yeah.
But I remember that block, and I've seen every episode of all 3 shows. So I feel like I can definitively tell you which one's not very good. And I know which one's not very good.
Is Seinfeld the greatest TV show of all time?
No.
Is it in the top 5?
Maybe. I mean, those questions are so hard to answer because
They're totally subjective.
Yeah, and I mean also like those shows are really influential. So whether or not they're good or not, it changed the way comedy was written and the way TV was written. So I mean, I think it was a really good show. I love Seinfeld and I still watch it.
Yeah.
There's lots of people who don't. I don't.
Do you have a show that would we have the senior culture writer of Buzzfeed News out of New York on the show, kind of a big deal right now. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it's a huge deal. If you were put on the spot and said, we're asked for your opinion on what the greatest television show of all time is, would you have an answer?
I know for me, the show that I go to the most is probably 30 Rock because I think it had some of the best. I mean, there is a joke every 30 seconds in that show, and the way that it's written is it's so well written. It's so fine tuned. It's so clever. I mean, like, I don't know. I think that's the show. And then I actually feel that way about Arrested Development in the first 3 seasons in particular. That show is like, I don't know how they wrote it. If like you watch it, and you're like, this is like math.
It's
like, how do they put this together?
To me, that's number 1. Arrested Development, number 1. And some people may wrinkle their brow at this, and if they do, I don't think they understand the show. But I actually think Trailer Park Boys is like a top 3 show of all time for the same reason. It's crude, it's crass, it's low budge. That's the whole point. It's the whole point. I mean, we wouldn't sort of like show it to your grandmother, maybe, or maybe you would, but I just think like it's the same sort of a thing where the humor is just incredible. Yeah,
I don't think I ever watched that.
Oh, you might love it.
I know, I think I might, but it never. I don't know.
It's because you're an intellectual. And so you
you're right.
You're so up. You're one of the elites, and so
I mean, listen, I've been saying that for many years. I'm too smart for almost everything, and that's why I don't engage with it.
It's true. I mean, people need to walk a mile in your shoes for once.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, did you when you were when you penned that piece on Friends, perhaps you didn't expect the blowback you got. But what about this one at BuzzFeedNews.com when you took on the phenomenon that is Q and QAnon?
Yeah.
And I mean, you just wrote about this. I thought that your report was absolutely incredible, including your ongoing conversation with Ashley Vanderbilt. Can you take us into her story? It's quite a journey.
Ashley's really interesting. She's 27. I think she's got a 4-year-old daughter. She lives in South Carolina, and she got really sucked into Q last fall. She lost her job, and she, I guess, had a lot of time to be on the internet. And a family friend brought her into Q. She brought her cousin into Q. Once I found her right around inauguration in January, she was posting on TikTok a lot because she was realizing that a lot of the stuff she believed was cult-like, and she was trying to deprogram herself. And so over the course of a few months, we talked a lot, and she went from being a Q believer that was like trying to get out of it and didn't really know how and wasn't really sure if everything that was a part of Q was wrong or if there were certain pieces she could keep, to fully deprogramming herself and realizing that everything she kind of believes politically might not actually be how she feels. I think she's one of those people who was just raised being told you're a Republican and that's who you are. And I think now she's having a lot of doubt.
So what do you think happened? I mean, you write about how Q and the posts have kind of gone off the radar, I guess is the way to put it. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think of how everything flared up on January 6th, I like everybody else, I mean, this is the most obvious thing to say, but I will never forget where I was that day. I will never forget spending the afternoon just aghast, sitting in this exact seat off air, looking at our studio monitors, watching news coverage, just going, what the fuck? Like, what is this? I mean, security guards and police officers being beaten with American flagpoles. I mean, what is, I mean, the imagery there. And then everybody's saying, well, Joe Biden's got a big task in front of him, like to heal the nation and to bring it together. And, you know, we talked to an infectious disease doctor yesterday who said that a big part of the whole like mask thing, dampening the curve, the variants, is that there's a whole subsect of people that are operating just with completely alternative facts, alternative evidence. They don't believe. I mean, there's just, she says you're kind of not going to get them on board ever. You can probably say the same sort of a thing. And I mean, hey, you know, tens of millions of people still voted for Donald Trump. Tens of millions of people, I would imagine, are still feeling disillusioned and somewhat inspired to not rule everything out, if you know what I mean. I mean, is there this kind of bubbling below the surface, do you think, right now? What do you think? I mean, a huge question, but what do you think the future of the United States looks like?
I mean, it's not bubbling below the surface. They'll tell you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Fair. You just got to talk to somebody. It's not even below the surface. Yeah, I mean, the Biden's going to heal the nation thing is nonsense. No, he's not. I mean, he's a centrist Democrat. I mean, no one's going to, by the end of his first term, no one's going to be happy with him. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
I don't think healing the country is necessary. I think a massive re-education program is necessary. I mean, a lot of the times when we talk about the people who've been sucked into Q, some of them have predispositions to Q because they were raised with racists, or they were raised with anti-Semitic family members, or they have something, you know, no one's born a racist, they learn it. So someone taught them that. You can re-educate somebody out of it. But then there's also another side of it that there's just people who don't know what news outlets to read, don't know that they should, don't think about the information that they receive. Ashley is one of those people. She never read a news source. She just would read stuff on Facebook and take it for face value. And then we're in an interview and she's talking about how she thinks Dominion, the voting machines, are owned by Nancy Pelosi's husband. It's a Canadian company, you know, like and that's one of those things that kind of goes back to the death of media. If you have fewer journalists who are able to fact check things and are able to provide you with correct information, then it's not going to be done. But I mean, we're at a weird place now where even if we have those people to do that work, there's such a huge swath of the country that just doesn't believe journalists. They think that we're all out to get them, as if there's some, you know, grand plot against everybody else. But yeah, man, I mean, it's not done. Like, none of this stuff is done. None of it's over. I would not be surprised if the sovereign citizens became a much more vocal force in the US in the next few years. I think COVID has delayed certain reactions that we would have seen. But, you know, vaccination rates are picking up here and things are starting to open up. So it's going to be a really weird summer.
Well, we'll continue to keep an eye on your incredible writing. Obviously, encourage everybody that's going to hear this podcast later or that's watching live now or whatever to follow you on social media, including on Twitter at Scaachi. It's one of my favorite follows. Thrilled that you agreed to join us and talk to us today from your home in New York. Thanks so much for this, and I look forward to talking again sometime.
Me.
Scaachi Koul, senior culture writer with Buzzfeed News. That was fantastic, and I'm loving this as well. The real talkers that are live on our chat right now. You have to know, Sam, that we would hit a nerve immediately when we ask what's the greatest TV show of all time, and I was curious to see what you were going to say. I do agree with Scarlett as well, and here's what I'm just going to be so wishy-washy and non-committal because I've already gone on the record and said that Arrested Development, I think I said, is the greatest TV show. What I should have done is a politician-style answer where I said something like many people would argue that it's the greatest, or it is one of the greatest, or it is among the greatest. Because Scarlett now says, correction, Veep is the greatest TV show of all time. And I could be convinced, maybe not. I mean, geez, I don't know if it's the greatest of all time, but it's got to be top 5.
I will admit that I've never watched Veep. I should.
What?
I love
What?
Julie Dreyfus. Yeah.
Sam!
I know. Okay, maybe that's my Easter long weekend project, is binging Veep.
Oh, you will. Because I was actually a little, I got to be honest, I was a little weirded out when you didn't, because you're a physical response guy. Mm-hmm. You're a wave your arms and smile and laugh guy. And when you essentially offered me a non-response when I invoked Veep, it weirded me out a little bit. I took it as though you were not excited about the program. I think you're going to love it.
Well, and that's just it. Like, by all accounts, I should love it. You know what I mean? It's an oversight that I haven't watched it yet.
I will almost go so far as to guarantee you will love it. Like, I would almost guarantee you will love it. Some random guy says Friends was really fun, but it didn't age well. I treat it like a time capsule of culture in the 90s and 2000s. Fatima says the animated Aladdin is problematic. She says, I say this as an Arab person. The tunes slap, though. The tunes slap.
They do. They absolutely do.
And Robin Williams was amazing as Genie. Oh, Robin Williams. The Watcher says Frasier is still wonderful. Wigwith says Friends just got popular because of Seinfeld. Christine says Mad About You was in there. Helen Hunt and Paul Reiser had kind of a good thing going. I see that as like there's a Mad About You. No offense, anyone, Christine included. Mad About You is kind of like it's like if it got a grade, it would be like a B+, like pretty good. B+ is pretty good. I don't know if it's even got an A. Maybe got an A. Maybe to get an A-. Maybe we're seeing a lot of love for MASH. We're seeing love for Golden Girls. We got to go back, right? Some random guy says Corner Gas is also underrated.
I would agree with that. I love Corner Gas.
And then Stephanie makes a very good argument. Marie says All in the Family. Can you imagine a show like All in the Family coming out now? Can you woo? Okay, so Stephanie argues for The Office. I mean, how do we not put The Office in there? Like the British version. I mean, the American version's great. The British version is unbelievable.
The American version got better the moment it stopped trying to be the British version, right? Like season 1 of the American version was very weird.
It's like
almost word for word. Yeah. And then when they kind of evolved the character of Michael Scott to be his own quirky, not Ricky Gervais manager, it was, I think it just kind of took off from there. I actually want to circle back to Trailer Park Boys, and only because when you brought that up and Sasha just or you said Sasha's an intellectual, she wouldn't watch it. And I will fully admit to being an intellectual who for years said Trailer Park Boys is stupid and I want nothing to do with it. And then I just got hooked on it. It is so brilliant. It is so well written. It's so funny. It flies under the radar. The low production value is what makes it so good.
Yeah.
I
agree. I do agree. I mean, if you don't respect Trailer Park Boys, you probably either haven't watched it. Oh, these are fighting words. But I mean it. You either haven't watched it or you don't get it. If you don't think it's amazing.
When it first came out, people thought it was a documentary.
And I do agree with you.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll read something that's a little bit heavy.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Like this from Greg. I just read this. He's on the chat. Like everyone's talking about favorite TV shows, and then Greg says, "I lost my childhood friend to QAnon. After more than 45 years of friendship, we can no longer talk about anything." I feel you, Greg. I don't want to get into it. I've got a buddy I just can't deal with anymore, and I told him so yesterday on Twitter. I can't handle it anymore. And you feel terrible, but it's like, I'm sorry, man. Like, I just, what can you say? What can you say? Share your stories with us. You can reach us anytime. Talk at RyanJesperson. Now I'm just like, oh, isn't it? You see somebody that you know, that you care about, that is an otherwise, this is going to come across like me being a real prick, and I'm not trying to be, but somebody that otherwise has been relatively intelligent and intuitive and has seen red flags everywhere and thin ice, don't walk on it. Hot pan, don't put your hand on it. Basic stuff. Angry dog, don't try to pet it. Like these types of things. And then they start reading about how, pedophiles are meeting at a pizza place and like all the Secret Service is there with the president, and it's in the basement, and all of a sudden it makes sense. Like this is probably happening. You're going, what in the hell is? I digress. We're getting to a roundtable in a few minutes. People are tuning in right now. They're going to be watching live because they know that at 9:05 a.m., which was, if you're watching us live, that was 4 minutes ago. If you're watching this later, you're like, who cares? That was supposed to be when we're going to check in with our 3 MT winners, our 3-minute thesis winners. And instead, we're talking about losing people to QAnon, and people are going to be going, what on earth is going on? That's how Real Talk rolls. That's the whole beauty of it. And we're so grateful to have so many of you along with us on this ride. You know, a great way to check in with the show is the hashtag Real Talk RJ. It's powered every show by the team at Park Power. They're in the internet, electricity, and natural gas game. And they're great friends of Real Talk and Real Talkers, so much so that if you want to take your business over to them, and why wouldn't you? You got to pay somebody for these services. At parkpower.ca, if you use the promo code 2021-Real Talk, they're going to give you $70 off your first bill. Plus, you can feel good about it, knowing that 10% of their profits go to nonprofits in the communities that their employees live and work. Very cool stuff with Park Power. We're also very proud to be partners with Quimby Energy. As mentioned, next Wednesday, which is our next live show, Quimby Energy will present Positive Reflections. We start our week off on a positive right foot forward, so to speak. All the left-handers are going to go, what are you talking? What's that sort of like infused messaging? No, hey, listen, start your week off on the right, correct, left foot, if you like, with Quimby Energy. Put that on a coffee mug. Quimby Energy is Tesla certified. They have installers, experts that are either journeyman electricians or electrical apprentices, so you know the job's getting done right. And whether it's commercial, residential, industrial, the team at Quimby handles all the paperwork so you can get the rebates and the refunds and tap into those government incentives where they apply. That's with Quimby Energy. We're really proud to partner with the team at Grand Dog Essentials, quality raw food. I've told you that our pups, Moses and Monroe, love the Grand Dog Essentials raw food, plus the additions that we're kicking in, like blueberries for Monroe. That's because we talked to the nutritional experts on their team. You can access them via granddog.ca. They love working with you to find the solution that's right for your dog, and they deliver to your door. When you're on their website, if you use the promo code REALTALK, they'll give you 10% off your first time order, delivering to Edmonton, Calgary, and Central Alberta. All right, I'm very excited for this conversation. I had a chance to meet and learn from and chat with these 3 remarkable graduate students and researchers. That was yesterday, April 1st, as the University of Alberta's Faculty of Graduate Studies and Research presented their annual 3MT competition. That's the 3-minute thesis. Basically, we're about to meet 3 people that are way smarter than most of us, including me, but they're going to try to make the subject of their research accessible so we can understand it. It's a total pleasure to welcome to the program Shubham Soni, Christina Moline Chernesky, and Nozima Faiziva. Welcome to the program. I feel like I can call you friends. It's great to see your faces again after yesterday's big event.
Hi, good morning.
Okay, so here's the deal. You're going to have to dumb down your research so we can all understand it, all right? And so I want to kind of tee it up for you, and then we want to go bigger picture and understand more about the Faculty of Graduate Studies and Research and maybe what it means for the communities where you all live and work. But Shubham, why don't we start with you? That you yesterday taught us about essentially a solution, like actually a liquid solution, a subject matter that some people might be familiar with if they understand the keto diet, but your application's totally different. Can you explain?
Yeah, so the principle in a lot of ways is similar. So I guess just for everyone listening, the basic principle and idea is ketones, which have, 100 years ago, when they were originally found in diabetic patients, it was associated with like a negative thing and something that's harmful for the body. And then over the next century, so over the last 100 years, we've come to learn, no, they're not necessarily so bad. They have important roles in the development of the body, and they're helpful for your brain in certain cases, and so on and so forth. But only about 8 years ago, actually, did we discover that ketones can also help reduce inflammation in pathological or basically any kind of a variety of disease states. And so the idea kind of came about of, well, one of the biggest disease states, or one of the most inflammatory disease states there are, is sepsis. So any kind of infection which becomes severely worse and worse. And so maybe we can use ketones to treat that. And yeah, like you mentioned, it's a little bit different than the ketogenic diet. There's lots of controversies in science, and there's still lots of studies being done regarding the ketogenic diet, its beneficial effects and also its harmful effects. But we're taking a different spin and a different angle on it from this recent ketone drink that was made in Oxford a few years back. And it's been tested in the US military, it's been tested in elite rowers, elite cyclists, and it's consistently shown to boost their performance as an extra source of energy. And that's primarily what we know ketones to be. But over the last 8 years, like I said, we're also exploring the anti-inflammatory roles that ketones have, and now trying to repurpose it for therapeutic uses in the clinic.
Shubham, when I was watching your 3-minute thesis, and you did a remarkable job of making information accessible in a relatively short period of time, what really caught my attention was the assertion that sepsis, and maybe you can explain this to us, sepsis factors in, if I'm understanding this correctly, it factors in to 1 in 5 deaths around the world. I mean, I'm not sure many people would realize that.
Yeah, and it blew me away as well. So, I mean, just to take a step back really quickly myself. So me as a person, I guess I do a lot of research in heart failure and diabetes, and I've also moved into pregnancy now. And sepsis came to be slightly more recently. I never thought to get into it. But yeah, when I'm doing the reading behind it, and in terms of writing some of my work on it right now as well, you come to learn about the fact that, yeah, the estimation is that 1 in 5 people across the world die because of sepsis. And of those 1 in 5 people, actually, approximately 50% are the pediatric population, so children under the age of 5, and the geriatric population, so the elderly folk. Now, it's not to say that this has happened. It's not like this is happening in other parts of the world. This is happening in our countries. It's happening in developed nations, and it's happening in the States and Canada. And the cost burden of this is so great. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it was over 350. I'm gonna muck up this figure here, but it was well into the high 100 millions in the States, and it's also growing in Canada. But yeah, ultimately, one of the last things that someone can experience, in addition to several other comorbidities or other diseases that they might have, is sepsis, and that could just be the last little I guess domino to fall over that can make things worse.
So I would imagine, I guess what I'm asking is, how big do you think, in the context of the application of your research, right? Because if you're talking about hundreds of millions of instances, I mean, do you sometimes lie awake at night staring at the ceiling going, this could be huge?
I'm not going to lie to you. I've been really excited about this project for since it kind of started, which is right before COVID happened. And the reason for that is not just because of the fact that we can help improve the management of sepsis, but also because, say, for example, someone has sepsis and they recover from it. Life isn't all sunshine and rainbows after that. Lots of the stuff that happens to your body during sepsis significantly affects your cognitive function, your motor skills, and so on and so forth. And so mitigating the inflammation that can happen in sepsis, so reducing it and treating it better, can also lead to better outcomes after the fact. And right now, as I kind of mentioned in the talk as well, 2 of the main things that are done to treat sepsis are antibiotics and fluids as well. So people get severely dehydrated. But one of the things is with fluids, if you are giving them like fluids right into their veins, you can also throw ketones in with there. So it shouldn't be too difficult of an implementation either. It's not a far-fetched therapy, and that's why it's incredibly exciting for me as well.
For you and probably millions of people. Like I was excited watching it, just thinking about the potential of it, knowing nothing about it or a little bit after your 3-minute tutorial. It was fantastic. That's Shubham Soni, who was the People's Choice winner yesterday. By the way, that must have meant something. Almost 3,000 people cast People's Choice votes. What did it mean for you to be chosen by the people?
I was taken back, but I was really happy. Obviously, I did not see it coming. I didn't expect it, but I mean, yeah, I'm really thankful to everyone who I contacted, everyone who watched it and also voted for me, and then also the judges as well for putting together such a such a great, I guess, system of showing the presentations. But yeah, it meant a lot. You know, yeah, it really did.
Fantastic. First runner-up in just a photo finish, a nail-biter finish. The first runner-up was Nazima Faizieva. And let me tell you, when I was watching and learning a bit about your research, I thought back to my sister, my beloved sister Megan, who when she was just over a year old, all of a sudden her eyes rolled back in her head and her eyelids started to flutter and she had a seizure. And anybody, any parent or caregiver, sibling that is, or individual that's ever experienced something like that or witnessed something like that, I think right now is going to be getting a little closer to their screen or turning up the volume to hear about your research. How did you start looking into what you're looking into at the U of A?
So good morning, everyone, again. I would say I had some nephews and nieces who had these problems. Febrile seizures are actually really common in childhood, but thankfully, a lot of them, the most percentage of them, they get cured by themselves. So we don't really have to worry about that part. But unfortunately, some children may develop epilepsies later on. So I was curious, who will develop epilepsy, how we can know it, how we can predict it, and if there is some changes which can be detected early on. So maybe we could focus on those children in other ways and prevent them from developing epilepsy later on too. So that question was in my head during my medical school years, and I started asking questions about it from my teachers, and there were some answers, but there was not one single final answer which would answer to this question. And I think research is the best way to answer for those questions. I think research is the way how to people change the world. Maybe you don't do a lot to change the world, but you take some of those small steps to answer for maybe the very small part of the one question. But at the end, by overall effort of all people, we be able to answer to these important questions one day, and that's how we change our world to improve it. So it just inspires me to do research about it and to be able to help people in any ways, not only in medicine, in all fields of the life.
Our audience members that are watching this live, and I guarantee you the people that listen to or watch this later will hear from more. Kim says, I have a niece with epilepsy. She has absent seizures, very hard to evaluate and treat. You can't anticipate them. Kim says, I'm really excited to hear about Nazima's research. Penny says her youngest son developed epilepsy at 30 a year ago, says it's extremely frightening. James says that his son was epileptic, but grew out of it. It sounds to me like there's all kinds of different scenarios. What you did, your presentation yesterday was excellent. Sam, let's call up that graphic. You helped people like me who have not been to medical school or don't understand, this sort of level of research, to use the idea of a light bulb. And it was such an effective metaphor to use. Could I ask you to kind of recreate that for our audience and explain what happens in the brain of a little one?
Sure. I think light bulb is a very overly simplified view of the brain, but still it's yet interesting and I think simple, easy to understand. So if you imagine a light bulb being a human brain, when it's active during the day, when we are awake, we are working, analyzing something, thinking, it's up, like on, lighting. And when we are sleeping, we are calm, it gets off. So it's how our brain works. And imagine when person has, like a child has a fever, we can all think that it gets brighter, shinier, radiant, and obviously it gets overheated, right? And what happens when, like a seizure, when child has a seizure, it just starts going on and off, and it lasts long. At that time, brain cannot function properly. Sometimes those signals get passed to the other parts of body, and it may accompany with other symptoms of seizures, or sometimes they don't get signals, don't get past the brain. So those absence kind of epilepsies, absence kind of seizures happen when children just freeze.
Wow. Nozima, people are asking, I love this audience is so engaged. It's great. Listeners wondering, are febrile seizures the same as epilepsy? Or even if not, let me ask, could your research apply perhaps across different boundaries of diagnosis?
So there are so many different types, symptoms and syndromes of seizures. Febrile seizure is not an epilepsy, it's just a syndrome. As I said earlier, it can be just cured by itself, just disappear while child grows and brain gets developed better, or sometimes it can cause some problems and we need to find in which children exactly, like who can exactly develop this epilepsy. Epilepsy is more like a chronic condition. It is a disease.
That is Nozima Faizieva, who's just doing the coolest work and helping us plebs understand it through her 3-minute thesis. First runner-up, the winner, top cheddar, big cheese, Christina Molin-Chernesky, with a presentation that was wildly different than all the others, which I absolutely adored, titled Pockets, Petticoats, and Privacy. Can you take us into it?
Yeah, so I study privacy in Victorian Britain. That's just really a broad statement. Yeah. But what I'm interested in particular is the ways that people assert their privacy when it might look to us like they don't have any. So certainly in the past, people lived very different than us. They had less time to themselves, less space to themselves, especially poorer people. And so I wanted to question, even if they're not talking about privacy and they don't use that same language that we do, what privacy looks like for them, if they had it at all. And part of what I've found over the course of my research is that I would argue they did, and that they tried to assert it in different ways and claim it if they didn't have it. And so, yeah, the pockets and the petticoats is also ways that, especially women, those are both things that women use to claim their privacy, hiding things on their person because they didn't have a space to themselves, sewing their small personal possessions into hems, things like that. So privacy happened in ways that we don't necessarily see or that aren't obvious to us. So it's research that sort of tries to question where we can find things that look different in the past and understand it better.
Did we, how differently have maybe what I should ask you to do is if you kind of set the context of when you look back through history, whether it's a couple hundred years or even 50 years ago, and you might say, especially people without means, maybe perhaps it didn't come across as they were entitled to as much privacy. But I also love that you point out, whether it's people watching, Bridgerton or Downton Abbey or whatever your favorite, The Crown, whatever your favorite show is, you made such a great point too. People helping them bathe, helping them dress. I mean, is it accurate to say that people were more apt to surrender? Geez, then look at what we put out on Facebook. Does anybody even care about privacy? Have we ever really cared about privacy?
And that's partly where my research came from. So yes, I start out my 3-minute thesis talking about historical dramas as kind of a way into what I think about. And certainly, yeah, whether you were poor or you were rich, bodily privacy looked different. Like you say, they had people to bathe them, rich people had people to bathe them, to dress them, to take care of their needs, to stand around while they ate. And poor people had shared rooms, slept in the same beds, things like that. So certainly to us, it doesn't look like there's any privacy. But yes, now we have a whole different conception of privacy. And part of what made me wonder about privacy in the past was privacy now. And in the last 10 years, this is a misquote of him, but Zuckerberg saying that privacy isn't a social norm anymore, and things like that made me wonder how things like the concept of privacy change over time, or if they do. Because I think part of what I would argue is that it's always been contested, and it's never binary. Like it's never been that you don't have privacy or you do.
Yeah.
There's nuance to it, right? And so it's not that we discovered a right to privacy, or that, although in law, I am not a lawyer, but in law, certainly there is distinctions there. But I'm looking at sort of more everyday life and how people live. And so I would argue there's nuance to everybody's life, and we assert privacy differently than they would then, but we still all assert privacy.
Do you think that there's going to be, I mean, people talk about pendulums swinging, and we can, apply that trend to so many different things. It feels to me, I even look at my own personal life, and you have to be a little bit careful. People try to be, I'll see some people that sort of, will blur out their child's face. They'll post a photo, but the face is blurred out, or they won't post photos of their kids. Others are like, Johnny starts grade 1 at, Middleton Elementary in Mrs. Johnson's class tomorrow. And you're like, whoa, people will have, and they're powerful videos, but people will post photo. I'm not being critical, but on Instagram or TikTok of sobbing or furious or sharing because they can amplify their feelings, and that's how they can be heard. And it's oftentimes very positive. At the same time, we're putting it all out there, and it's being monetized, and we are being monetized, and we are the product, right? Any social platform that's free, you are the product. Do you see the pendulum swinging back? Do you think people are going to start to pull back, or what do you forecast?
I generally try to look back and not forward as a historian in training.
Fair.
But at the same time, that's part of what's interesting about history too, is how it allows us to think about our lives and the future. And yeah, I think we've been talking a lot over the last 10 years about privacy. And I mean, you see things like in the EU, the right to be forgotten, and sort of different sort of legal challenges, and who knows what's going to happen with the Biden administration and regulating social media. So I think that all is it's a very dynamic environment. And I would argue it always has been. People, as they developed agency in different ways and try to adapt to changing situations in their lives, make different choices and assert different rights, or make different choices in their lives. And so I certainly think people are more conscious of it than they were several years ago. And like you say, some people choose to use it for their social lives or their work lives, and some people don't. And so there's different choices made by different people at different times. And I think we're just all more aware of it.
Yeah. Penny,
in a way that
I didn't mean to cut you off there. My apologies. No. I just noticed a comment here from one of our viewers, Penny, who says, she comments on the privacy that some of us feel when we're wearing masks. I can relate. Actually, to be honest, I kind of don't hate wearing a mask. I'm actually kind of quite enjoying it, especially when you find one that feels comfortable, and I actually quite like it. I don't know that I ever would have said that before. What's your experience been?
Oh my goodness, I hadn't thought of that. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the other thing I talked about in my 3-minute thesis, is that what we're showing of our lives on work calls and working from home and being home more and wearing a mask and covering things up or revealing them in different ways is all part of how we think about what we show to others of ourselves, both physically and sort of psychologically, like what thoughts we share or what emotions we share. So no, I mean, you can cover up your smile or your not smile, your frustration with someone with a mask.
Although they may see it in your eyes a little bit. Yeah.
Most of the time, probably.
It's so funny. You made such a good, I mean, look at this. I mean, I'm assuming that the three of you are joining us from home, maybe not, but isn't that true that we invite people into our homes? Like, we talked to a doctor out of Saskatchewan a couple of weeks ago. It was hilarious. He admitted live on the show how much it was bothering him that we could all see his toothbrush in the background. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was real life. We've had people on the show that have had messy backgrounds. We've had people with really, I think of that divorce lawyer, Sam, in Vancouver, that just had this opulent, incredible background. We didn't ask her about her rates, but it's funny, isn't it? I was on a Zoom call earlier this week, nothing to do with the show, but there was a gal on the call with like a trifold, like one of those things in your rooms you can get dressed behind or whatever. And it was like a woven sort of a basket type texture. And I'm honestly found myself trying to kind of like see through, trying to like see behind what was behind the trifold. None of my business. Like, why am I? She brought us into her home. What am I doing? It's like looking in someone's medicine cabinet. I was snooping around, trying to see behind it. Anyway, what a fascinating time. Absolutely amazing. I love that watching the three of you here, Nazima, Shabam, you're both laughing and listening, to what your colleague, when she talks about her project. Did you feel through this 3MT process, Shabam, did you feel almost like a camaraderie? Did you find yourself almost cheering for, supporting your colleagues, your researchers? I mean, it's not exactly like you're all working side by side every day. You may barely ever see each other, right?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, like in my case at least, I was actually rooting for Nozima because we actually were in like our small group and we were working on our presentations together. We got to help each other kind of build our presentations and update them.
Cool.
And not to throw you under the bus or anything, but it was. I'm really glad with her new visuals that she has with the baby pictures and the lighting, because initially it was a little bit scary. It was just a baby looking like he had light bulbs all inside of it. And it's very, very updated. So I'm really glad that was the case. And I'm really happy for her as well.
You didn't want to get the impression what to do if your baby swallows 10 light bulbs?
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely, we worked together. We worked together to help each other out. And she, helped improve my presentation as well. So I was happy with the process. And in this case, I was actually, because I was more familiar with them, Nozima's presentation, and then also Sujani's presentation. She was another presenter as well. But then, of course, after seeing Christina's, it's also, I love that kind of stuff as well, because it's a lot more philosophical and it's a lot more relevant and very topical and timely in today's day and age. And outside of research or just thinking of, I guess, societal issues, I can see why it connects with a lot of people, and I really enjoyed it as well. So absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I hesitate to start naming some of the other projects, because then that means I'm going to exclude some of them. But I mean, like you said, even with Christina's being somewhat more philosophical or historical, I mean, they're also different and fascinating. There were talks about Indigenous consultation from out of the faculty, from like an arts perspective on tailings ponds, which was really an interesting angle to take there. How do Google Maps fit into understanding industrial emissions? I mean, that was another one that really impressed me. Work on prosthetics and making prosthetics feel more natural to the people that are wearing them or utilizing them. I mean, just subject after subject, understanding gender fluidity and pronouns in health research. I mean, whoa, right? I mean, so cool. Nozima, did you have that experience too? Where I mean, obviously you're presenting your own 3-minute thesis, but you're probably looking around. Do you feel almost a sense of pride of what you're seeing from your colleagues?
Yes, definitely. I was really impressed. I really loved to learn about other projects going on the campus. I was so impressed that there are so many great people doing great job out there. I think I felt some kind of a pride that I'm a little part of this huge community. And also, as Shubham already said, we helped each other on those workshops, and I started learning about other projects. I got interested in his project. I started asking, is it really a thing that those sports people really drink that ketones, how it works? I started questioning, and Christine's topic also made me question myself about privacy, because I realized that I also like wearing a mask, especially when I'm not really in a good mood or I didn't really have a good sleep. I just want to put that mask on and just go like on the streets, not look in people's eyes and just be in myself. So I think it is really interesting and impressive.
Yeah.
I really liked everybody's work.
That's such a good point. This is a true story. I found myself the other day. I had to actually physically go into the bank for the first time in a long time. And I pulled up and I was wearing a mask, my sunglasses, and a ball cap down low. And I realized, like, at no other time in human history could you walk into a bank. I mean, I did take the sunglasses off, but it's like, what on earth? Like, how are these bank tellers? They must have 15 heart attacks a day when people are walking through the door based on their training. Shabam, I can't go any further without asking. People are going to say, like, what is this magic potion that people keep talking about that cyclists drink that is legal, that essentially, I'm going to exaggerate, but allows them to, in that final mile, push through that final kilometer and win the Tour de France? What is this magical potion? Because people are going to want to write it down.
Sure. So there's actually a variety of them. They're basically called ketone esters, and a lot are made. The one that we're using, like I said, it was one that was developed at Oxford, and it's on a website, HVMN. I'm not trying to market them or anything. That's not what I'm saying. But basically, the way these kind of work is, so the key, like if you look at it from like a bigger picture, you can't really eat ketones. It's not really a thing. So these like synthetically made molecules are made, it's just two ketone molecules that are combined together. And then when you ingest this as a drink, as soon as they get into your gut, they're broken down relatively quickly into two ketone molecules. And that's what elevates and spikes your ketone levels in your blood for a couple of hours. And while that's happening, you're providing more ketones to your muscles, for these cyclists in this case, or the rowers. And that gives them additional energy, and that provides that additional boost of performance in whatever that they're doing. So it has lots of applications for sure. But keep in mind, when we're talking about these elite cyclists, these improvements can be seconds, and that's a really big deal when it comes to these kind of competitions.
Yeah.
But for your everyday person, like, again, I'm no doctor, I'm not giving anyone advice here, but I'm not sure if just chugging these ketones is gonna all of a sudden fix all your problems. That's not what I'm saying. So it's just be cautious about what you do.
Well, thanks a lot. I mean, I was assuming that all of a sudden I was going to become an elite athlete. It's like buying new running shoes makes you run faster kind of idea. But I will tell you, I know of at least one audience member by the name of Brad that watches every show while he cycles. Like he's got this great setup in his garage. He's got screens all around, and he like hammers out 100K while he watches the show, which is just wild. So
wow,
that's a lot. One day he cycled. One day he said he was riding. I believe it was to honor. I believe it was a mental health thing. I hope I got that right, Brad. But he said I'm going to ride 200K today, and he just blasted it out. Like, what? This guy's remarkable. Yeah. So
if he wanted those ketones, I'm sure he could definitely pump up those numbers even more than he already is.
Well, he can stop messing around, and he can finally pump out 300K. Right? Just quit messing around. Right? So Christina, where do you go from here? Because this is like, I mean, your big win yesterday now means that you move on to the next level. So if we want to join you on your journey and cheer for you, what did the next little bit look like?
Well, I will get the feedback from the judges that from yesterday's competition, and then I will work on another video. And then I am involved in the Western regional finals. I don't have a date written down for it yet, but it'll be the same sort of format, an online Zoom competition, and so we will see how that goes.
And then we'll get to say that we knew you when. We knew you when. Before the entire country wants interviews, we got this one here on Real Talk. I love it. You don't have to know about the next stage. Like, this is like, like after people win the Stanley Cup or whatever, and they do the interviews the next morning. With the local, and they're wearing sunglasses inside. I mean, the fact that you even showed up after the big win yesterday is remarkable, Christine. So thank you so much. Hey, to the three of you, honestly, what incredible ambassadors the three of you are to the University of Alberta, to the Faculty of Graduate Studies and Research. And congratulations, all three of you. People's Choice winner, Shabam Soni, first runner-up, Nozima Faiziva, and our winner, our first place, Christina Moline-Chernesky. Have a wonderful long weekend. Enjoy some well-deserved time off, although if I know anything about the three of you, what I've learned, you're probably going to be right back at it. Continuing to lead the charge on innovation. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Just three remarkable people. Sam, I was almost enjoying watching you watch that interview as much as I was enjoying talking to them.
We were saying off air before the show started, because I watched 3MT yesterday too, that I was just like, wow, these are going to be three like absolutely diametrically different topics that we're discussing, and they're all fascinating. You know what I mean? And I think, the camaraderie and the collaboration, I think, is the biggest takeaway from me from that segment, is how, there's like, we call it a competition, but it's not really a competition, right? So it's like, it's fantastic to see. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
I was actually lucky enough to be one of the judges for this. And I'm a lousy judge because I'm first of all cheering for everybody that's doing an amazing job. Like, what are you gonna say? Someone's research is more important or better than someone else's? Also because Carrie, my wife, would tell you that when I'm in a restaurant, this is true, I ask the server to pick for me because I'm indecisive. I pretty much know how I feel about any hot button issue, but I can't decide on a menu item in a restaurant. I'm very indecisive. So I'm always like, when they're like, what's your third place, second place, first place? I'm always like, one of these kind of people. So I find it very difficult. Steph says 3 p.m. every day. She's got a tradition: stationary bike and real talk in the AirPods. Steph, atta girl, love it. That's music to our ears. Hey, if you're looking to have plumbing work done or mechanical work done, there's been this like knocking. You can hear it in your home, but you have no idea what's causing it. All you know is that you are on the precipice of potential catastrophic mechanical failure. Look no further than Todd's Mechanical. Todd's Mechanical is the best plumber in Edmonton, bar none. Don't take my word for it. Well, do, but bolster the assertion by checking out his online reviews. He's proud of them, and he should be. Todd's one of these guys that he was working away from home in the oil patch for a lot of years, and then he wanted to be home with his family. He wanted to be home in his own bed every night. So he's been working out of Edmonton now, doing service calls, and we're hearing from Real Talkers. I remember Kathy wrote in a while ago, she said, I called Todd's Mechanical. He was there in a half hour. She said, I've never seen somebody walk into the boiler room of our workplace with such confidence. Call Todd's Mechanical today or write down the number for when you need it at 780-499-7598. That's Todd's Mechanical. You can find him under the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com. That's also where you'll find the team at Friesen Brothers. I loved it. I heard from Guy Mercereau yesterday. Guy is a great friend of the show. He said, my wife and I went to check out Friesen Brothers' new Edmonton location because we heard it on Real Talk. Blew his mind. I can't wait to talk to Guy in person about it. Heck, as a matter of fact, I'd love to go grab a craft beer with Guy when we can in the Friesen Brothers restaurant. They've got it on tap. They've got wine on tap at a grocery store. Smash burgers, fresh sourdough sandwiches made to order, pizza. I mean, don't even get me started on the cinnamon buns. Friesen Brothers has 15 locations across Alberta, proudly Alberta grown and Alberta owned. The team at Clean Air Club wants you to breathe easy, save money along the way, so why not swing by cleanairclub.ca right now and sign up for their furnace filter replacement schedule. They make it nice and easy so you don't all of a sudden go 9 months and then go, oh my gosh, I don't even want to know what the air, if I could see the particles in the air, I would choose not to. I would choose not to know what's blowing through our current furnace filter. Cleanairclub.ca makes sure your family breathes easy and you pay less than you would in store. We had a great conversation yesterday with a fellow by the name of Brad West, and if you missed it, you're going to want to check it out. He's the executive director of a place called Glengarry Childcare. They've been a nonprofit childcare provider for a lot of years, and Brad was articulate and relatively calm, but all kinds of fired up. You could tell, if you watched the interview, you could tell he was fired up as the $25 a day childcare funding essentially disappeared for the majority of families that were tapping into that. Ultimately, it was, originally, it was a pilot project under the previous Alberta government. And the NDP in official opposition now are saying that if they're elected, Rachel Notley says they're going to make it a thing. She says they're going to bring it back and make it a thing. Rakhi Pancholi is the MLA out of Edmonton Whitemud. She's the official opposition critic for Children's Services and one of the very few Real Talk guests that has been booked and confirmed while we were live on air over Twitter. That happened yesterday. So welcome to the show.
Hey, Ryan, that's just how we roll, right?
That's how we roll. Well, it was pretty cool for us to know that you were watching and that you were engaged. And I know that Brad's message is one that was, I mean, we saw emails yesterday I'm flirting with the idea of actually taking Real Talkers into my email inbox here and actually showing it on screen so people can see that we're receiving literally hundreds of emails every single day. Most of them were about curriculum, but a whole bunch yesterday were about childcare. I bet that's not going to surprise you.
Yeah, not at all, Ryan. So first of all, let me just express my thanks to Brad for speaking up. He's a strong advocate, but I also want to thank all of the childcare operators, the educators, the staff in all childcare programs across Alberta, because it has been an extraordinarily challenging year for the early learning and childcare sector. And most importantly, it's been very, very challenging for Alberta parents. So the emails that you're getting are probably look a lot like the thousands of emails and messages that I've received from Alberta parents, some who are part of the $25 per day program, who received the benefit of that fantastic quality and affordable access to early learning, but many parents who said, my goodness, that would be life-changing if we could have access to that. You know, I've tabled petitions signed by thousands of Albertans. I've tabled hundreds of letters in the legislature from working parents across this province saying, you know, access to affordable quality early learning and childcare is transformational, would be transformational for us. And it's really important for our economic recovery. So I'm not surprised to hear that you're getting those messages, because I certainly have been over the last 2 years.
Can I ask, first of all, let's acknowledge that not everybody is completely submersed in municipal or provincial or federal politics. And we do our best to stay on top of things, but especially folks that are, you know, have looking after kids as a top priority, and they're trying to make things work and keep their eye on the ball, so to speak. So what's the reality right now in Alberta? My understanding is that some programs, about 13 of them, it sounds like, are going to kind of keep the funding. Others have lost it. Some people are saying the minister's picking winners and losers, despite the fact that she said that was the opposite plan. What's actually going on right now when it comes to funding for childcare?
Sure. So thanks. So there was approximately 122 childcare programs that were part of the pilot program for $25 per day childcare. That's out of about 2,500 across the province, give or take. So that's we agree. It's a small portion of the actual childcare programs in our province. It was meant to be a pilot project to test out access to universal childcare. So this is key, right? Because it was the first time in this province that we have actually taken steps towards universal childcare programs, which means all children, regardless of their family's income, would have access to quality, affordable early learning and childcare. So it was a pilot project. Now, that was the 122 centers. That program was funded primarily through a funding agreement with the federal government that ended, and those 122 childcare centers will go back to charging regular fees. And that's, I think, the heart of your question, Ryan, is what is the climate like for early learning and childcare right now? So we know that childcare was critical to getting parents to be able to get back to work during the pandemic. And we also know that it's been hit really hard. And when I say that, I mean, we've seen a number of cuts that were implemented before the pandemic hit that took effect during the pandemic. And then we saw, of course, because of COVID, there's restrictions on the number of kids that can be in childcare programs. A lot of these programs are operating, actually most are operating at about 50% capacity, which means that they're licensed, for example, to have 100 kids in their program, they can only have 50. And that's because they're trying to keep the small cohorts. But you have to remember that childcare programs are basically funded in two ways. They're funded off of some supports that are provided to low-income parents who get subsidies. And then there's a little bit of government funding that goes to top up the educators' wages. But for the most part, almost all of these programs operate solely off of parent fees. Right. So parents are funding these. That's how they keep their lights on, that they can stay open. And parent fees have gone through the roof. So I want to give you a number just to give you an idea, because I know you talked about it a little bit yesterday about the cost of childcare. And this is the average childcare cost in Calgary. And this is average, meaning I know there's parents who pay a lot more. Right now in Calgary, a parent with a toddler would pay $1,250 per month on average. And that's including like day homes, right? Which often charge a little bit less. Is
this for full-time care?
Full-time care for one toddler, $1,250 a month. Okay, so just to throw something out there for you, because this is a number that kind of blows my mind, and I keep bringing it back to help people understand how unaffordable childcare is for not just low-income parents, but most parents. And that's if a family in Calgary has 2 kids in childcare, which is pretty average. I had 2 kids in childcare for almost 4 years, that will cost them $2,500 a month. If they're making $75,000 as a household income, which that is well below the average household income, but $75,000, they're not eligible for any subsidies, meaning they don't get any support to pay their childcare fees. So that means that family of 2 kids in Calgary is paying 53% of their net income every month on just childcare. Like, that is completely out of the reach of most families, right? This is not just a low income issue. Of course, we want to make sure that low income families have supports that they need to access quality early learning and childcare, but most families can't afford it.
Rakhi, Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm not a banker, which may surprise some people with my mastery of economics, but I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that no bank would approve anybody for a mortgage that would take 53% of their net income every month. Don't they cap it at 30 or 40%?
That's right.
So
30,
in other words,
30%.
Yeah, you'd never get approved for a mortgage that would cost you as much as your childcare. That's a huge wake up call right there. That's the billboard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talk about that figure all the time to drive home that this is a real issue for so many families. And let's be clear, it's an issue for our economy. When we talk in Alberta, what's the number one issue that we've been talking about, certainly since the pandemic, but long before that? We've had some economic tough times in this province. So the number one thing that we talk about all the time is getting Albertans back to work. So when we talk about getting Albertans back to work and creating jobs, suddenly when it comes to working parents, and let's be clear, Ryan, I know you know this, we're talking about working moms, all of a sudden getting them back to work falls off the radar. And what is the most, I guess, the largest barrier for working moms in particular to get back to work is access to affordable quality childcare. So this is an economic issue. We cannot just ignore the thousands of working moms and say we can just take them out of the workforce and we'll be okay. Our economy depends on these working parents getting back to work. We want them to, not only because they have the right to be able to fulfill their own career aspirations, and they have a right to go out and work and have full economic participation as anybody else should be, but we actually want them to. It grows our tax base, it increases our GDP, it creates jobs, and let's be clear, it's also a clear investment in children. Early learning, these critical years of learning, 0 to 5. I've said it before on your show, I'll say it again. Kids, we don't suddenly only care about the way kids learn and how they learn when they enter the door of a school. Those critical early learning years are so important for a child's development. We all, as a society, have an interest in making sure that kids have access to quality early learning. We all have an interest in making sure that women can get back into the workforce. That is good for our economy, it's good for our families, and it's good for our kids. So it should be a top priority.
I'm going to offer a caveat to this next question, because I know that people are going to say, oh, you're going to be critical of the government and then tee it up for the opposition member to just hit it out of the park. And I don't want to throw you some softball that allows you to just take big swipes at the provincial government. But you are in opposition. You're the opposition critic for Children's Services, and the question is relevant. So I have to ask it. It's been obvious to Albertans that there is, at least in one direction, an adversarial relationship between the provincial and the federal government. That's obvious for anybody that's listened to Jason Kenney talk for more than 3 minutes at any given time. Can't stand Justin Trudeau. Described him once as having the political depth of a finger bowl. By the way, if you haven't read Graham Thompson's piece in iPolitics, just out last night, unbelievable reference to the finger bowl by one of the greatest political writers in Alberta. I digress. The point is, this provincial government has left hundreds of millions of dollars on the table. I don't know if it's because they don't want to give credit to the federal government. I don't know if it's because they think they can do better. I don't know if it's because they had to spend a little to get a lot. Only Jason Kenney and only the UCP cabinet knows that. But job training funds have been either threatened to expire or have expired. Early support for workers, like $300 million worth, was left on the table. Alberta, one of the only provinces, if not the only province, I'm going by memory, to have left that money on the table. Now, Heidi chimes in and she says, it's maybe a small thing, but do you notice how Rakhi recognizes the funding from the federal government? She says, good luck getting that recognition out of the UCP. Here's my question. How important, in the context of subsidized or supported childcare, is a healthy relationship and collaboration between the provincial and federal governments?
So here's what I'll say to that. One thing I'll say is, let's be clear that early learning and childcare is actually provincial responsibility. So I'm not going to let the province and this provincial government off the hook for that. It is absolutely the responsibility of the provincial government. That being said, it has also been clear that the federal government plays a key role in establishing supports for provinces to implement strong early learning and childcare policies. The NDP relied on federal funding to start that pilot program for the $25 per day childcare program. That was critical. And what we've seen over the last year is that actually the federal government has been the one that has kept Alberta's childcare sector afloat. We know that this government constantly resists negotiating and working with the federal government. They were actually quite happy to take 85% of the funding that came to support the childcare sector and parents during the past year during the pandemic came from the federal government. They're very happy to take those dollars for childcare. They don't give credit for it. If you ask the Minister of Children's Services, she will constantly refer to the well over $100 million that was provided in support to the childcare sector through cooperation between the province and the federal government. Well, 85% of that came from the federal government. Now we know that we've got a federal government that has said, at least that in principle, that they're going to be looking at a national childcare strategy. That's going to be important because we see in Alberta that our provincial government is abdicating their responsibility for it. So part of me is thinking, you know what, at least for the sake of Alberta families, for the sake of Alberta children and women and workforce participation, if one level of government is willing to step up and do it, I think Albertans should say, thank you, we need it, because we do, our economy needs it. That being said, it's going to be a long time before the federal government will really come up with a national childcare strategy that will make a really on-the-ground difference for Alberta families. And we cannot wait for that. I know that the federal government has intentions. They're going to be announcing a federal budget coming out soon. There's going to be announcements, but let's be clear, it's a long time away. And this is something that women in this country have been asking for and have been demanding for decades. It's been 50 years since the Royal Commission on the Status of Women, where in 1967, they came out and said, we need to put a fee on daycare costs. The public purse needs to support that because it's a public good for women to be able to get back into the workforce. 50 years and we're still no further. And I think when I think about the end of the $25 per day program, that is what breaks my heart, right? Because, of course, yes, I'm a member of the NDP. I ran for the NDP because I saw them implement a pilot program for $25 per day program. It is life-changing. It is transformational. And that's the story that I've been hearing from so many parents who have lost now the support. I had an emotional press conference last week, Ryan, with a number of parents where when the camera stopped rolling, I was expressing my thanks to them and we were crying because this is affecting their lives. They're making choices now for their children that they never wanted to have to make. They're talking about leaving their workforce. They're talking about not having a second child. They're talking about the fact that their child is going to be taken away from an early learning childcare program where they were loved and supported by quality educators and they had friends. It's breaking their hearts, but it's also hurting our economy. So we campaigned in 2019 about expanding this $25 per day program across the province to all licensed childcare programs. And that's what we're saying now. We rolled out a proposal in the fall of 2020, maintaining that commitment to rolling out that $25 per day program. Rachel Notley has said on the record, I'm very proud that, day one, if we are elected again in 2023 to be government, we will be rolling this program out across the province because our economy needs it, our families need it, and our children need it. We cannot wait for the federal government to step up and do this. I hope they have great intentions, but I also don't trust that this current provincial government is actually going to negotiate in good faith with the federal government. There's going to be games that are played. We know that. They want to just take the dollars and put it into parents' pockets, which, look, that is a strategy that conservatives have used forever around childcare. They say just put more money in parents' pockets. That doesn't work.
Okay, but let's talk about that though, because there are differences in opinion. Like, you know, depending on who you talk to, either like, let me sort of, in my mind, as a civilian, here's my understanding of how the scale works. Over here, people would argue that there should be a universal basic income. We should cover the costs of all childcare, or childcare centers should be properly funded. Then we'll get into the gray area, and I respect these points of view. Some people will say we should put money in parents' pockets. The conservatives will, and it can be powerful messaging. They'll say, we, as politicians, the rich part about it, but I get the message. They'll say, we believe that parents know how to better spend their money than politicians, which kind of is like a weird inherent. It's like the old Hyundai marketing where the slogan was, yes, Hyundai, which acknowledged that everyone thought that their cars were shitty. I thought that was like the weirdest ad of all. Yes, Hyundai. But that's like politicians talking about how greasy politicians can be. It's kind of this weird circle. Anyway, but they want parents to spend the money. They believe parents can spend it best. And I actually think you can make a compelling argument for it. And I'm actually inclined to believe to see things, I can sympathize with that point of view. Then there's the perspective that there should be $25 a day care for families who qualify. Then there's the perspective there should be $25 a day care for families, for all families, right? And then there's the idea that it's not the state's job to raise your kids, and if you can't afford to have kids, then don't have kids. And my wife stayed home, or I stayed home, so we could have, I mean, speaking from a male perspective, you've heard it all. I mean, there's not one agreed upon route to take.
Yeah. And so I could stay on your show for an hour, Ryan, and
we
talk
got lots
about
of
all
time.
those, but
we got lots of time.
But let me say, so first of all, let me get to that idea of parents just need to have the financial support, put more money in parents' pockets, and let them make their choice. So first of all, that's premised on a couple things that aren't true. So it's premised on the idea, first of all, that there is a market for childcare, that there is as many childcare spaces, licensed programs, quality programs out there as are needed. First of all, we have childcare is a public good that is primarily privately delivered. And the problem with that is that we know that parents need it, but it's not always there. We do not have the supply of childcare that we need to actually meet the needs of all parents. So we have, and there's various different figures, but you could certainly say that there's roughly about licensed childcare spaces for about 1 to 6 or 1 to 7 of the actual children in Alberta. So we don't have enough spaces. So the idea that parents can just take their dollars and go use it wherever they want, there's just not enough spaces to begin with, particularly in rural areas, particularly what we call childcare deserts. So the market doesn't actually supply the amount of childcare we need. Second of all, the implication that parents just have an extra few dollars in their pockets and they'll go out and they can choose and they have choice. Choice implies, again, that there's accessible, affordable, and sufficient quantity and quality of spaces for childcare. There are not. Parents right now, and 50% of Alberta parents say that the number one barrier for them accessing childcare, and 50% of them say why they've had troubles finding childcare is because they cannot afford it. So simply putting a few extra dollars in a parent's pocket does not magically make childcare available or affordable. It also, by the way, it's very linked to the fact that as parents get more dollars in their pockets through things like tax credits or even subsidies, childcare fees go up. And we have a perfect, unfortunate example of that in Alberta just over this past year. Last year, the provincial government announced that they were going to increase the amount that low-income parents got for subsidy, which is a great thing. I'm not going to argue with that. That is a good thing to provide more dollars to low-income parents. But the increase was roughly about $140 for a low-income parent, making less than $50,000 per year. Childcare fees in Edmonton, Alberta have gone up by more than $140. I told you the example of Calgary. The average childcare fee last year went up $175. So that increase in subsidy has already been eaten up by the increase in fees. It's already gone. The difference, that low-income parent still has to pay more. So we cannot talk about parent choice and act like there is an ample supply of affordable, accessible, and quality childcare out there. There just simply isn't. And I want to be clear that childcare fees don't go up because of greedy childcare providers. there are ratios that are required in terms of the number of educators to children. It is impossible for many small private operators to be able to operate with a profit, a childcare program that, given the wages that they have to pay, and they're based primarily on what parents are able to afford. So childcare fees are going up, but that's because the cost of childcare fees are going up. And throw in COVID, and it's like a total disaster, right?
Oh.
So I mean, like these programs are hanging on by a thread. And so, that idea, I get it. That's parent choice. I love that idea. If it really was a choice, if parents who want to choose to stay home with their kids, that is a great choice. Parents should be supported in doing that. And tax credits play a role in the system. Absolutely. But the reality is, parents don't truly have choice, and it's a cop-out. And by the way, I just want to throw this out there because this was like a head-slapping moment for me when when we saw this current provincial government, the UCP, basically announced $108 million in what they call the working parent benefit, right? So they had accumulated dollars over this past year from their budget because the childcare sector wasn't operating at full capacity. So they had $108 million left over. I'd been calling on the government repeatedly to invest that into the childcare system, meaning to keep programs afloat, to lower childcare fees for parents. Instead, what they did is they took a quarter of their budget for childcare and handed it out in a one-time payment to parents making less than $100,000 per year. And don't get me started about how many parents were excluded from that. A one-time payment of $561. And that really just meant that covered about the equivalent of 2 weeks worth of childcare for parents, and it's gone. It's going to go in their pockets. I'm sure parents appreciated that $561, but it's gone now. And the next month, childcare is going to be just as expensive, if not more expensive. To me, this argument that putting more dollars into parent fees or parents' pockets is somehow supporting parents is not true. And it actually shows me how bad this government is at the economy. That was incredibly poor investment of childcare dollars. $108 million could have extended the $25 per day program for another 2.5 years. It could have expanded the number of centers and programs offering $25 per day for another year or two. Like that would have made a difference to 7,500 children or more. Instead, there's a one-time payment that's gone. So, these are bad investments, and it's simply just not helping parents in the long run or getting people back to work in the long run.
We're talking to Rakhi Pancholi. She's the official opposition critic for Children's Services, the NDP MLA out of Edmonton Whitemud. Hang tight for 1 second. We're going to pay a couple of our bills. I wanted to let you know right now. See how we just roll into that, Rakhi? We make it as smooth as we possibly can. Very smooth. Just like the smooth ride of the 2021 Jeep Cherokee Sport 4x4. You typically see it listed at about $44.75, but right now at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge, it's on sale for $34,990. That's right, more than $5,000 off. These are the ones with the 3.2-liter V6 with a 9-speed automatic transmission, heated leather-wrapped steering wheel. Watch the leather. Heated front seats, remote starter, a touch screen with integrated Bluetooth and Apple CarPlay. You'll find Alberta's best Jeep and Dodge Ram lineup at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge. Also, big shout out to the teams at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Megan yesterday chimed in. She said, we're up in the Fort Mac area. We grabbed Dairy Queen. She said, I apologize. It's not from the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton or Sherwood Park, but still, maybe you could give DQ a shout out. We said, it's the spirit of your message, Megan. The spirit that resonates. If your long weekend is going to include maybe a medium dipped cone or a sundae, you know you can get 2 of them every day after 8 p.m. 2 of them for $5 at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Make sure you tell the team that you're a real talker. They love to hear from you. So does the team at Westworld Computers. Awesome to hear from Anand. He's a good friend of the show. He went and saw Daryl and the team in Westworld Computers. We always love giving Westworld a heads up when you're going to swing by so we can make sure you get the best possible customer service. They've got a great lineup of all the new sexy Apple stuff, but then of course they've got the gently pre-owned stuff too, with all the software reloaded, the warranty reapplied. You can buy with confidence like people have been doing for more than 40 years at Westworld Computers. They're powering the Real Talk studio. Hanging out with Rakhi Pancholi. She's the NDP MLA out of Edmonton, Whitemud. I'm not sure I've ever actually heard you say that before, that the $25 a day pilot was the reason you decided to run for the party and ultimately knock on probably hundreds or thousands of doors and win and essentially put your career in this direction. With regards to the promise that your party's leader, former Premier Rachel Notley, has made official opposition leader now, obviously, if she's back in that Premier's office, she says this will be a thing. What have we learned from that gives you the confidence that that's the best way to go? And more specifically, what do we know about what it means? I'm going to say the cost. I know you're right away going to spin it and say, no, the investment, Ryan. You're going to say the investment because that's a big part of the argument, right?
Absolutely, because we've talked about this for sure. So we know that investing in early learning and childcare is probably the smartest economic policy we can make. I'm not, I've never hidden from the fact, and neither has Rachel as leader, that it costs, there's the cost to this, of course. It does cost a lot of money. First of all, governing is about choices, right? And you want to invest our public dollars in good investments. And early learning and childcare has at least a return on investment of $4 for every $1 invested. It could be up much higher than that over the long term. It is a smart investment. It increases our GDP. It increases our workforce participation. It increases our investment in children in the short term and long term. What we've learned, and this was the whole purpose of doing this as a pilot project. I mean, we hear the conversation and the talking points coming from the UCP and the minister about, this was about picking winners and losers. Well, it was about a pilot project for a transformational system for childcare and early learning in this province. We had to do it in a phased-in way. Any province that has done it, Quebec, BC, has done it the same way. They phase it in. You have to work it out. You can't just overhaul the system. That would be, I think, reckless. We did it in a very thoughtful way and saw great results. The evaluation from the pilot project was absolutely was making a huge difference in parents' lives. It was increasing the quality of care by educators getting top-ups and professional development. It was making a significant difference. So yeah, the plan is that we would be rolling this out across the province. Again, it has to be done in a thoughtful way. And one of the things that we've been very clear about is that we would have to do it in absolute consultation and work with the childcare sector. All programs, we're talking about day homes, private operators, nonprofit, out of school care programs, preschools. We need to do it in a thoughtful way, but it is critical. It is a platform. It's something that we did campaign on in 2019, which yes, it is a reason that I ran, because that is taking the economy seriously, and it's taking women seriously, and it's taking children seriously. And that's what inspired me. So it has to be done in a thoughtful way. I don't want to be glib about the significance of the rollout of it and the work it would require, but
it would be huge.
We now have. It absolutely would be huge.
Right. People look at Quebec and they'll say, like, this is a model or this is, a model for study. I'm not going to ask you to endorse the Quebec model. Quite frankly, I don't know too much about the Quebec model, except for half of Alberta thinks that they're paying for it out of their paychecks. That's about all I know. But are we talking like, and I know that the finance critic, and maybe even Rachel Notley herself will go, Rakhi, don't say exact numbers. Please don't say exact numbers. Right? And you're not going to give me exact numbers, but are we talking like or maybe you can. Are we talking 700 million? Are we talking $2.5 billion? What are we talking?
We've costed it out at $900 million a year.
There you go.
And we have it. It's in we rolled out an early learning and childcare proposal in October 2020. It's on our website, albertasfuture.ca. We've got all these economic policy proposals there. That is one of them. We've costed it out. And let's be clear though, the direction that we're hearing from the federal government is that this is the direction they're going in as well. When they're talking about a national childcare strategy, they're talking about making sure that all children across the country have access to quality, affordable early learning. This is the direction the federal government is going in as well. And so there will be supports from the federal government to do this. So when I talk about, yes, early learning and childcare is a provincial responsibility, but going forward in that direction for a $25 per day program is very consistent and is quite in line with the direction that the current federal government is going. So I believe there will be a long-term commitment and support from the federal government to do this as well. We're not all on our own doing this. But yes, and I just want to speak really quickly to the Quebec model, because the economic benefits of the Quebec model are undisputed, right, in terms of workforce participation, GDP growth. There were challenges, though. I'm not, there were things about the Quebec model that I think we learned from those experiences when we rolled out the $25 per day program. One of the things that the Quebec model didn't do was focus on quality early learning. It focused just on the affordability piece. And we saw some long-term implications for that. That's why when we rolled out the NDP rolled out the pilot project for $25 per day, it included supports for, like I talked about, professional development, wage top-ups for educators. The number one indicator of quality early learning is the qualification of those educators. It included the implementation of an early childhood education curriculum called Flight. So we took that very seriously and said, this is not just about putting a cap on fees. It has to be quality early learning, because that's what makes the difference as well. So we've already have learned some lessons from what other jurisdictions have done. And so, yeah, this is a massive program. And I don't mean in cost, I mean in terms of impact on our economy and our families and on children. Like it's an ambitious plan, but it is transformational.
I mean, if you look at all the things that you can spend money on, $900 million is not a joke. But at the same time, provincial governments have been known to commit more than $1 billion to show support for a pipeline that's headed off a cliff. So, I mean, if you want to send a message to the rest of Canada, and if you want to be serious about jobs in the economy, I would suggest that, it would probably resonate across the country if Alberta were to initiate something like this. It would be national news. It would speak to people that are in other jurisdictions that may consider. I mean, I think that this could be somewhat of a welcome to Alberta type initiative.
Absolutely, Ryan. And thank you for saying that, because, when we're talking about trying to make Alberta, positioning Alberta for the new economy, whatever that's going to look like, and we have such great potential, so many, I've listened in on so many conversations about post-secondary and about tech and about AI. And those conversations are all about how do we attract people and how do we attract companies to want to grow in Alberta? Well, guess what? Livability and quality of life are huge. Right. So absolutely, it would be something that we could put out proudly and say, come to Alberta, because families will want to live here. Employers will want to set up here because they know that their employees will have access to quality early learning, which is, I loved the comment yesterday when I was listening to your interview with Brad. Yeah, employers care about this deeply. And that's why I've been really heartened by conversations that I've been having over the last, year, especially. I've been reaching out and having great conversations with the chambers of commerce, Edmonton, Calgary, the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. You've seen the statements from, Bank of Canada, RBC, Scotiabank. This is not just, a social policy. This is economic policy. Employers are interested in, businesses are interested in. We should be seeing it as a way to attract people and companies to Alberta. It would make a huge difference. And we are going to, I think one of the things that really hurts my heart, I'll be quite honest, is that Alberta has been far behind for so long on early learning and childcare. We really have been. The $25 per day was the first real progress that we've made in a long time. And to see that end really means to be going backwards in time, which, by the way, seems to be the MO of this government. They certainly, with everything from the curriculum to this, to so many other things, they seem to be living in a different era. Well, we want to position ourselves, and we should be positioning ourselves and our economy as forward thinking. And this is part of that. It's why we've rolled it out as part of our economic policy, because it is about attracting Albertans and supporting our economy and getting more Albertans back to work.
Thank you for hanging out with us today. It's great to see you again.
It's great to see you. By the way, can I just add, cool that you had Scaachi Koul on this morning. Right? I'm a huge fan of Scaachi. Her book, One Day We'll All Die, None of This Will Matter. That book, as a brown girl who grew up in Alberta, spoke to me on so many levels. She's so cool. And I just want to put in my plug. I agree, Arrested Development is an awesome TV show, but I also have to add my personal favorite, Parks and Rec, because it is a show about public service and optimism, and it's funny as hell. So I just have to throw in my plug for that. It's one of my favorite TV shows.
I also feel like Parks and Rec, I have no idea even how TV production works anymore, and budgets for entertainment and network televisions. I don't want to say dying on the vine, but kind of in a way. And but I feel like Parks and Rec was one of those shows where it was kind of like Taxi back in the day, where you'd never really be able to afford to put that cast together now. You know what I mean? Because
Totally.
everyone's careers just went wild after Parks
Yeah.
and Rec. It was one of those kind of launch platforms. It was kind of like what the Daily Show was for Samantha Bee and Stephen Colbert and everybody else. I'm forgetting people, of course.
Steve Carell. I mean, yeah.
Steve Carell. Yeah, like, jeez, unbelievable. So hang on though. What's that?
John Oliver.
John
Returns to the
Oliver.
mix as
John
well.
Oliver.
Yep.
Once you actually start thinking about it, it's like
The Daily
oh my
Show's
gosh.
made like most of the modern comedy circuit.
Yeah.
That and SNL.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sam. Okay, Rakhi, anything else you want to go on any hot takes? Anything else you'd like to respond to or go on the record on? I think we've got Parks and Rec, an endorsement of Scaachi Koul, which I'm glad you said the name of her book. As you said it, I realized, oh my gosh, I never mentioned her book. But there's a lot to talk about with her, you know.
Oh, she's cool as hell. That's all I got to say. And I loved having her on. I just want to say thank you, Ryan, for continuing this conversation about childcare. The end of the $25 per day program, I thought I'd feel like really devastated, which I kind of was a little bit, only because I've been working so much with the parents and programs who really care so much. But I actually feel a lot of hope. This conversation around early learning and childcare, more and more people are having it. It's crossing partisan lines. It's crossing organizations. People are taking it seriously. So I actually have a lot of hope, and I just want to thank you for continuing that conversation because I think it means a lot to a lot of people.
Well, we're citizens, we're community members. We know who joins us, who subscribes to the podcast, who watches and listens, what they expect from this show, what they're taking from this show, and it's part of it. I mean, quite frankly, people feel underrepresented and disrespected right now. So, Rakhi, thanks for hanging out, and thanks for your work on it. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Have a wonderful long weekend. This is we did hear from some people that were curious. What was that Graham Thompson? What was the Graham Thompson op-ed, or what was the piece that you mentioned here? You'll find it here, ipolitics.ca. Graham published it on March 31st. With his inability to navigate, Kenny has run his ship aground. Graham is a widely respected and longtime columnist on the politics in Alberta. He writes that the problem for Alberta's premier is that he's been such a thunderously partisan opponent to a consumer carbon price. He's painted himself into a very tight corner with no easy way out. Graham doesn't actually even touch on the curriculum debacle in the piece, but the passage that I referenced is here in the 2019 provincial election. This was in the context of Jason Kenney's comment that Justin Trudeau has the political depth of a finger bowl. Do you remember that quote? I mean, first of all, it's a great zinger. It's a great zinger. And some people will say that actually maybe that's not inaccurate. Some people, just because it's okay to say, people will say to me like, oh, why don't you go? Did you see the tweet about me yesterday from what was it, Canadian Dad or something like this?
Oh, yes.
Did you see this tweet that I said? It was actually hilarious though. I thought it was funny, but I got this from the account Dad's Edmonton yesterday that said, and I don't even remember what I was commenting on, but I think it was something obvious. It was a rather benign observation on my part, and this guy responds by saying, Jesperson, Iveson, Nenshi, and Notley can all fuck off to Ottawa and hang out with their racist, corrupt, thief, liar, and groper of a prime minister whom they all love. Real Albertans will stay and support our elected majority, says the good foot soldier Dad's Edmonton. A few notes. Number one, as everybody noted as I tweeted it, Dad's Edmonton actually used whom correctly, which was remarkable. So congratulations there. The other thing that I was especially excited about is of all the high-profile Albertans, Iveson, Nenshi, and Notley all followed me. I was named first, and he spelled my name correctly. So Dad's Edmonton, thank you very much. But let me remind you that criticizing one politician, or as we might say in this line of work, holding them to account, does not equal endorsing their political opponent. In other words, I can find fault, I can find reasons to be critical, and in some cases, very critical of the federal government. And I can do the same with the provincial government. It's not like a weird team sport where it's the Battle of Alberta, or it's Leafs versus Habs, or it's Yankees Red Sox, or it's what's it like a literary, the McCoys and the Hatfields? Is that it? Am I getting it right?
Sure, or I'll throw in like the Sharks and the Jets or something like that.
Yeah,
Why
but
not?
I want to take it out of hockey so people can what was
Sharks and the
Star
Jets
Trek
was,
versus Star Wars?
Yeah, sure, we'll go there.
Oh, what was Sharks and Jets? Did I miss your
It
reference?
was West Side Story.
Oh, sorry, buddy. I thought you were talking about NHL. See,
That's not really a rivalry.
it's not a rivalry at all.
No.
See, the technical producer's too smart for the host. This is what happens. Back to the quote. Justin Trudeau has the political depth of a finger bowl. Several years ago. Writes Graham Thompson 2 days ago, in the 2019 provincial election, Kenney was afloat in a sea of 1 million votes. However, a mid-March Leger poll showed the NDP had 40% support in the province, with Kenney's United Conservatives at 20%. The next election is still 2 years away. A lot can change between now and then, but it would seem Kenney's ocean of support can be measured these days in finger bowls, not fathoms. And it's very rare that I react out loud to a column, but I went, oh, like I was like, attaboy, G. Thompson. Way to go,
Graham
Graham.
Thompson's been a little unleashed lately.
Yes.
And it's awesome.
It's amazing watching people that have dropped the shackles of corporate media and are still rolling with insurance. That's a double whammy. Those are the guys you got to really look out for. We're going to get to trash talk in just a little bit, but we had a ton of other emails that I wanted to get to, and these are not necessarily trash talk. I mean, they could be. I mean, let's do it. Let's show my inbox. Okay? I hope that nothing happens here. I hope we don't get anybody in trouble. Before you take my screen, let me take one last quick look just to make sure.
Yeah, just
to make sure
that like your social insurance number isn't in
my
the
social insurance number
somewhere.
isn't showing, or people aren't like, this isn't like a leak from the ledge from a staffer. But okay, so let's take my screen. So here, this is it. I just want to give you an idea so you guys know that, I mean, we're not bullshitting when we tell you this stuff. Like, I want you to look at the subject lines, and I want you to look at the times the emails are coming in. Okay, so like look at all the subject lines. New curriculum, proposed elementary curriculum, curriculum concerns, deep curriculum concerns, K-6 curriculum, draft curriculum, feedback on proposed draft. You get the idea. 1024, 1018, 940, 924, 918, 909, 853, 849, 841, 819, 804, 801, 801, 801, 8 a.m., 752, 722, 720. You get the idea. Okay? This is, here's page 1. Okay, this is still, okay, this is, okay, April 1st, you see all this? Page 2, curriculum rewrite, curriculum, new Alberta curriculum, concerned parent, letter to the Prime Minister, a critical point, new draft curriculum, defend Alberta parks, curriculum, it must be completely scrapped. April 1st. This is just yesterday, okay, so that's 100 right there. Let's go here, let's show you another 50. This is just in case, like, we'll pull back the curtain. This is my inbox, okay? April 1st, look at all this. Here's 50 more. Curriculum, feedback, draft curriculum. Please do not implement curriculum. Feedback, Alberta's curriculum. Curriculum draft letter, rejection of proposed. We're still on April 1st. That's yesterday. There's 150 of them. Curriculum concerns, appalling new curriculum, grave concerns with proposed curriculum. April 1st. Okay, we're into March. So now we're into 2 days. Okay, so 200 yesterday. We could keep going. March 31st. We don't have, I think we've, so it's not like we've received 7 emails. It's not like we've received 7. About 200 yesterday, and March 31st, there were more than that. So I'm going to call it approximately 500 over the last 2 days. Those are just the ones that this show is CC'd on. So you can imagine how many the government's seeing.
I mean, Rakhi kind of touched on that too. She's like, I have thousands and thousands on this file. You know what I mean? And we get CC'd to emails to her as well. So like, we've seen a little shred of what she sees on this.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out too that you should CC like investigative reporters, CC the official opposition, even CC the official opposition conservatives, CC the federal NDP on letters that you're writing to the federal government. Always give. Like, there are different ways to infuse accountability. It's easy for a government, like Premier Kenney did the other day, to look into a camera, to look right into your eyes, so to speak, and say, we got 7 emails about Aloha Gate. Not true. And we know that because we have several hundred of them that you CC'd us on. And I could not say that definitively if I did not have all the emails right here in my inbox. So you hold the power, people. Don't you ever forget that. To talk at ryanjesperson.com, Naomi writes, I'm a parent of 3 elementary-aged kids in Edmonton. I, along with everybody I know, am appalled beyond words by Alberta's new draft curriculum. It clearly was not written by people with appropriate expertise. It is so slapdash that it includes a great deal of plagiarism. There are passages that are downright nonsensical or wrong. And someone is sneaking in dramatic changes and edits every day, live. It doesn't even appear to have been written with children in mind, let alone Alberta. This curriculum would undermine the public education system that keeps our province wealthy, healthy, and peaceful. Naomi says it's horrifying to be vicariously embarrassing. That would be a great band name, Vicariously Embarrassing. I'm embarrassed for my province that it has published such a mess. We must go back to the original progressive conservative plan or to the NDP plan. Please get a real curriculum committee, rehire teachers, real pedagogical experts, and real subject matter experts. Start over. Sincerely, Naomi. What about this from Colleen? Says, I'm a parent of 2 elementary-aged kids. I'm writing to express concerns about the new K-6 curriculum. I have many, but because I don't have hours to spare to articulate all of them, I'll stick to my primary concerns. First, much has been made about the lack of developmental appropriateness in the new curriculum, particularly with reference to grade 2 social studies. My son will start grade 2 in September, writes Colleen. By the way, she lives in the riding of Banff-Kananaskis. Lucky gal. Says, my son starting grade 2 in September just learned to read simple sentences. Having missed much of kindergarten because of COVID, he's behind on the basics, as are many others like him. Yet he'll be expected to understand ancient Roman traditions, origins of early democracy, medieval social order, the origin of the Silk Road, routes of European exploration, Genghis Khan, managing money, and planning a meal. That's just a tiny portion of the grade 2 social studies curriculum because the sheer volume is staggering. And what's the connection? It seems like a random list of European history. How are teachers supposed to even attempt to teach this in any sort of meaningful way? Especially when there's also math, science, language arts, and more to be learned. It says, I guarantee there are adults that would struggle with learning all this, let alone 7-year-olds. Another concern is the inclusion of world religions, signs Colleen. Why are public school teachers expected to teach religious doctrine? And why are all religions except for Christianity positioned as brought by newcomers? Hinduism, Judaism. By the way, happy Passover to those that are celebrating. Buddhism, for example, all are older religions than Christianity. Followers have been members of Alberta's communities for decades, if not longer. What makes them the beliefs of newcomers? The inherent bias and racism is reprehensible and has no place in a classroom. And she says, why are the Ku Klux Klan included? Given that no time is dedicated to any anti-racist groups, this is beyond problematic. I do think it's worth noting, by the way, that Colleen is a woman of color. I sometimes have to kind of cut out portions of these emails, but it's relevant to her point. She says, finally, I'm at a loss as to why a new curriculum is needed at all. She says, our existing curriculum involved a great deal of work by renowned educational experts and educators. It's been referenced as a model from jurisdictions around the world. The new draft seems to me as coming across as an exercise in changing something because your government wants to undo everything the NDP did. It's a gross misuse of taxpayer dollars, especially when such drastic cuts to education have already been made in the midst of a pandemic. I implore this government, says Colleen out of Banff-Kananaskis, to seriously consider the negative long-term effects of moving ahead with this new curriculum. Our kids will not be equipped with the critical life skills they need to succeed. Sarah said, as a parent with a child starting kindergarten this year, the draft curriculum terrifies me. The requisites indicate that writers have not only never been in a real classroom with kids of this age, but also suggest they've never met a child within this age range. Sarah says, I'm beyond thrilled to hear that Elk Island Public Schools has taken a stand and will refuse to pilot this trash. This should be a major indicator to you that the people in your constituencies are concerned and that you should be too. MLAs take note. That from Sarah. These are, as you saw, 200 emails yesterday, about 300 the day. So I picked about 3. We could sit here and we could read you hundreds of emails. Keep them coming. We want to hear from you. It means a lot to hear from you. Another way that you can be in touch with the show is to answer our question of the week, which is presented by Y Station at ryanjesperson.com. This week, we're getting some really interesting feedback on how you feel about the vaccine rollout. Next week's question of the week, I don't think the team at Y Station will mind me giving you a little teaser, a little spoiler. You'll never guess what we're going to ask you about. We're going to ask you about the curriculum rewrite. We had about 4,600 respondents, I think, to our Aloha Gate question of the week. I want to see if we can get over 5,000 this time. I think we can do it. RyanJesperson.com. That question will be posted officially for you Wednesday morning when Sam and I are back live Wednesday morning. We're taking Monday, Tuesday mornings to be with our families, to go off the grid. Well, you can do whatever you want, Sam. I'm going off the grid. I can't wait. Sounds like I don't want to go off the grid. Do I have to go off the grid? You don't have to go off the grid.
No, I mean, going off the grid sounds appealing to me. But I think I'm probably going to be finishing renovations. But yeah, you do you, man.
That could include off the grid.
Yeah.
Get a little drywall dust in the hair, like, you know what I mean? So Wednesday morning, we'll post our fresh question of the week. And, of course, our Patreon subscribers, thank you to you beauties, will receive the official and exclusive top-line report. So you can go through pages and pages of curated and processed data, scientific data on how Real Talkers feel about issues that matter. Very, very cool stuff. We're proud to partner each and every week with the team at McBain Camera. If you have a unique photo, why not put it in a unique frame? McBain Camera can place your favorite prints in a beautiful custom frame that will add an extra flair of personalization to your home, your office, or maybe even, I don't know, a recording studio. Head down to the McBain store. There's 6 of them here in the province of Alberta. The one closest to you to choose from a variety of frame options that'll best suit your image. They also offer many other high-quality print items and options, including gallery wraps, which is kind of my personal favorite. I love the wrap. Metal prints, which are super cool, plaque mounting, and more. You can shop safely at any of their 6 convenient Alberta locations, or of course you can live chat, which is a really great feature, with a team member right now at McBainCamera.com. Also wanted to encourage you to check out landscapeedmonton.ca today. That's where you'll find the more than 20 years of experience of the team at Eden Landscaping on display. You can check out some of the projects they've done, connect with their team, and understand how they can work with you to not only design, but build your dream outdoor project. Whether that's a retaining wall, a fitted stone patio, an outdoor cooking area, maybe a swim spa, whatever you can dream up, they can make it happen at Eden Landscaping. I've got this weird thing happening right now, which would be a real nightmare if one was about to be heading into something like, trash talk, where I have this little tickle in my throat. And it's messing with me. So I'm just for a second going to mute myself and get ready to put these pipes through a workout. Because every single week, the team at Local Waste reminds us that for more than a quarter century, they've been providing waste management services, garbage and recycling to businesses of all sizes. And they love to fight for your business. They love to talk trash. They want to compete because they know that your budget might be tight and they can work with it. Forget about these big multinational faceless garbage corporations. Give Chris, Lauren, or Mikkel a call today. Ask for them by name at 780-242-9746. They would love to talk trash with you. You can check out localwaste.ca as well. You know, each and every Friday, our friends at Local Waste present a little something we call Trash Talk. Earmuffs on, kids. This one from Fred, who wrote into talk at RyanJesperson.com. He says, things are pretty heated right now in Alberta, so I figured I'd send you a trash talk in case you wanted to get people all worked up about something less serious. Music to our ears, Fred. He says, I hope all the Flames fans are ready for the Oilers to put up 7 next game. He says, I couldn't imagine not being able to beat the Senators. It's sad, really. He says, I feel bad for all of you. Sincerely, an Oilers fan. That from Fred, who didn't want me to use his name because he doesn't want to be held responsible for any associated jinxes. Tough call, Fred. It's your call. You're on the record picking a fight with the Battle of Alberta. His name is Fred. How about this one from Tyler, who wrote in? Tyler says, I'm a Christian, and I'm appalled at what's transpiring at the so-called Grace Life Church. In Jesus' name, let's infect everybody. Ass hattery abounds at that church. What kind of kangaroo court is going on here with Alberta Health Services and Alberta Justice? Ryan, what would have happened if a mosque or a marginalized group that wasn't white pulled this kind of shit? They would have shut him down and called the army. This is just another example of our fearless, gutless leader. That's right, Jason Kenney, looking at you, mister, trying to please everybody while putting us all at risk. Thanks for the increase in transmission, Jason. Angrily yours, Tyler. This one from Judy. She sat on it. She thought on it. After our exclusive with the mayor and the deputy mayor of Lesser Slave Lake that led to Pat Rain, the MLA, being booted out of Conservative caucus, you're going, oh, we're going way back. Judy says, as soon as the mayor of Lesser Slave Lake revealed he's a UCP member, I got suspicious. She says, I've been thinking about it. Don't you see? This is all part of the theater. The Conservatives realized they needed to gain back Albertans' trust. Now, one of the biggest issues they have is the parachute candidates. They're all being discovered. How many UCP members of Alberta's government are actually residents of the ridings they represent? This publicity event was just their first attempt to gain back our trust, gain our sympathy votes, and it looks like Albertans and the media are falling for it. That from Judy. Interesting take. I love this one from Ragey Christina B. She says, let me start by saying I was green before it was cool and long before it was a political catchphrase. I helped save the whales, the ozone. I raised awareness for the rainforest as well as Clayoquot Sound. The carbon tax is a load of shit, says Ragey Christina B. The environment minister's crappy canned responses were crap to the max on your show, Ryan. My house was built in 2013. It's poorly insulated. We use a space heater. And instead of telling me to upgrade my 7-year-old home, encourage builders to stop building crappy spaces. Public transit? No. There's no way I'd feel safe. And I'm white. Imagine being an Asian woman or a Muslim woman. Not a chance. Buy a more fuel-efficient vehicle? Is this guy for real? We're middle class. I've been driving an 06 Toyota for reasons like it runs fine, I can't afford a new payment. What's the carbon footprint of manufacturing a new car versus buying used? Stop telling me I get more in rebates than I pay in carbon tax. It's BS. Consumer goods go up in price. Nobody will absorb the price increase of fuel, heating, cooking. They'll pass it on to people like me. Tax the coal exports heading to China. Tax the rich who live in homes typically far larger than necessarily. And lastly, nobody's talking about the fashion industry, the next largest polluter and emitter. Stop attacking Canadian oil and gas from Ragey Christina B. And this one, we had to dial this one back because Scott's got a bee in his bonnet. But some lines even we can't trash talk, even right here. Okay, so Scott, I apologize for the omissions and the edits, but I had to, buddy. He says, Ryan, here's my best effort. Whew, buckle up. Scott says, I gotta be honest, every time Alberta's premier opens up his mouth, my body tenses with rage. What an embarrassment. I'm particularly outraged this week, though, as an educator and a parent of a child who would be starting kindergarten this year. This trash heap of a curriculum is supposed to come into force. What really gets me is when the premier starts spouting off about how awful he thinks education is because of made-up issues like Discovery Math and his quest to end constructivism. Can I remind you, sir, you were booted out of Bible school? He says there's no such thing called Discovery Math. No curriculum anywhere directs teachers how to teach it. Alberta remains solidly in the top echelon of jurisdictions for math, science, and reading scores tested internationally. You could try citing your sources, Jason. I don't know to justify this whole shamble mess, but we all know that all you're relying on is Wikipedia and core knowledge. The official opposition, infinitely more qualified and educated than you, which must drive you nuts. But they do respect experts when it comes to K-12 education, practicing teachers, and dedicated researchers. Why don't you give us all a break from the gaslighting and the lies and put this abomination of a curriculum where it belongs, in the shredder? That from Scott, who went on to say, thanks for Real Talk. Keep it up. We promise we will. After a few days off, next Wednesday, live, 8:30 Mountain, 10:30 Eastern. We'll see you then. Have a great long weekend.